anniversary. Anniversary. Sorry. Hey guys, it's AD. All right, cool. What's up, guys? Mack and Black. We're gonna talk to you a little bit about rmtalk.com. I talked to you about it last week. I'm really excited, guys. Rolling Meadows Talk, a new local news and offer website for the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I did a little bit of a live stream with them a couple weeks ago now for the Bucks Bears Thursday night game. Really cool. Little thing as far as local deals, events, business directory, lots more. Check out rmtalk.com. We actually do our live shows in Rolling Meadows at Reps Place Sports Bar. Obviously, you guys know about Reps Place. We're huge fans of them. But, small businesses need your support, guys. Now more than ever, help kind of get us out of this rut here. So support our local small businesses now more than ever. Do us a favor, check out local offers and news at rmtalk.com. That's rmtalk.com. With that, guys, we also have a pretty cool giveaway. And Steve, do me a favor and pull that up for me so I can tell these fine folks about it. You guys can get a gift for giving this season at Reps Place. What an awesome thing. RM Talk is basically going to be doing a gift card rewards program with Reps Place. Reps Place is offering gift cards rewards for RM Talk visitors throughout the holidays. All you have to do, here's how it works. If you purchase a gift card at Reps Place using this offer, you will receive an additional gift card for free. So if you buy a $25 gift card, it's $5 extra. If you buy a $50 gift card, it's $10 extra. And 100 equals 25 extra bucks for you to spend. You claim the offer below. You put your coupon code in. You'll get a coupon code mailed to you or emailed rather, and then you'll present the code at Reps Place for the gift card purchase and redeem your bonus gift card. You guys know that we love Reps Place. Good food, good vibes all around. So again, check out rmtalk.com. And again, the Reps Place giveaway is, it's one of those that really, if you're gonna go and buy a gift card, you might as well use this card or use this offer rather and get yourself some extra money. So again, rmtalk.com, and again, head home there. There's a couple of different ways you can do it, and I believe it'll be under deals, right, Steve? I don't know if Steve's on the mic.
You could find it on the homepage. You can find it on deals. You can find it all over the place.
Cool.
And we'll put the link in the description below as well.
All right, perfect. Yeah, guys, that's what I was going to say. Definitely, check them out. We are a small operation ourselves here, and we want to reward other small businesses. So, thanks again for the support, RM Talk. And again, it's rmtalk.com, and check out that exclusive offer for Reps Place. Business out of the way. What's good, my man? Did he just freeze on us again?
And he's having internet issues.
Internetual issues. All right. Well, let's. Nick, can you hear me, man?
Yeah. I hear
okay. What's up, brother?
Hey, my fault, dude. I don't know, dude. You know what? I might have to invest on a hardwire. Because I don't think this computer is a fan of the Wi-Fi.
Nah.
So I might have to find one of those 900-foot cord hardwires.
Yeah. Invest. I'm telling you, Amazon got some deals, bro.
Oh, I know, dude. And I'm gonna have to take full advantage. So.
All right.
I'm gonna need all these Houston area Texans to start adding some decent tips on these DoorDashes so I can go ahead and
Lord. Is the DoorDash game, how different is it out there than it is here? You still got to get used to the areas, right?
Yeah, well, I found a real nice rich area here in Houston, and I sometimes be out here just playing the role.
Right.
So
smiling.
I'll be like, I swear to God, dude, go in, smile. Be like, the kids are always waiting for me at the house.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, like Houston is like this big time gated area.
Oh, really?
Like a lot of the places are gated.
Mm-hmm.
So I know when they give me a gate code, but it's a house, I already automatically know that it's going to be some like $3 million home almost.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, I'll be out there playing the role. I'll be out there. All right, sir, you have yourself a good one.
I really love the brick on your house, sir. Wow, this is some really nice brick.
I swear to God, like, this is a great pattern that you did cutting the grass here, sir. Nice job there. All right.
He looks at you like, you know what? Let me go back in the app and give this guy a clean 10 right now. Hold on. You know?
Swear to God, dude. When Houston was in Game 7 of the ALCS, I actually DoorDashed that night. And, like, I don't know if they were baseball fans or not, but I got this insane $55 tip from some guy with this big-ass crib, and he got, like, a bunch of Mexican food and margaritas. And, like, DoorDash is real funny because they don't tell you what the whole tip is. They'll give you a piece, and sometimes there's actually more on it than what they'll tell you.
Oh, wow.
So it was only, like, $8.50, and somehow $8.50 turned into $55. I almost did a backflip in that dude's backyard. I was like, "Sir, thank you, I appreciate it." I wanted to give him my car. I'm like, "Hey man, if you need any other delivery services, I'm the man to call, man. I'll take care of you. Don't even trip.
Just call me direct.
But,
call me direct."
I mean, nonetheless, yeah, dude. But what I was trying to tell you before the show came on, because my Wi-Fi was being just that Wi-Fi. So I was asking on how overrated Jim Harbaugh really is as Michigan head coach, because they're right now getting beat by Indiana, and then they just lost to Michigan State last week.
Yeah,
and Michigan State right now is getting blasted by Iowa.
Wow.
And like what kills me is the whole reason why Lloyd Carr was fired from Michigan before Harbaugh came along was because he couldn't beat Ohio State.
Right.
Well, Jim Harbaugh is not only losing to Michigan State, but he can't beat Ohio State. So I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, Jim Harbaugh, if I was him, I would start calling the NFL and be like, okay, I think I'm ready to come back.
I was just about to say, you know how overrated he is? He's so overrated, he's going to be the Bears coach in a year. I guarantee you. And you know what? I agree with you, dude. Jim Harbaugh loves the 3-4. The Bears already run the 3-4, and all he has to do, and think about it like this too, because Jim Harbaugh is more of an offensive guy than his brother John, who's more of the defensive guy. If you brought Jim Harbaugh into Chicago to fix that offense, because we'll get into that a little bit later on, because not only was I peeved at the fact that the Bears lost, but then I started reading some of these stories and comments of what's going on between Nick Foles and Matt Nagy. And it's like it's so bothering because I feel like the blame is 50-50 here, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But Jim Harbaugh to Chicago would make a whole lot of sense. And Chicago fans, I know, was it him or John that played for the Bears? I think it was him, right?
Say it again.
I was saying, it was that him or John that played for the Bears? I want to say it was Jim, right?
It was Jim.
It was Jim.
No, it was Jim. Jim was the quarterback of the Bears.
Right. So now we know why Bears fans are, have such a hard on for him. Honestly, I'm thinking you want to go from Matt Nagy to Jim Harbaugh, like as if that's some sort of huge upgrade, right? Like we're gonna. Don't worry, I'll have plenty to say to rip into Matt Nagy about, but who's to say that Jim Harbaugh's gonna do any better? I just, you know what I'm tired of, Nick. I'm tired of these. Hot potato with the same old potatoes, with the same old coaches going back and forth.
Right. But let me say this too, because I think Jim Harbaugh got an unfair shake in San Francisco because they were saying that he rolled the players too hard, and that's why they stopped playing for him. But you can't deny the resume that he had when he was in San Francisco.
Yeah, it
was like 3 straight NFC title appearances, and one of them turned into a Super Bowl appearance. And technically, San Francisco was one one non-defensive pass interference call away from making one of the monumental comebacks in Super Bowl history, because they were losing big to the Ravens until they came back after the lights went out. So, you never know, dude. But I think bringing in Jim Harbaugh, if you were to move on from Matt Nagy, I think bringing in Jim, because he has NFL experience and his resume is actually really good. He's not from this coaching tree like Matt Nagy was. This man actually is a coach and had a decent resume before he went to Michigan. Phil's saying that he read that he has a $12 million buyout if Michigan was to let him go. Whatever.
I'm sure they'd gladly pay that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know, man. I tried to give this Jim Harbaugh in Michigan like a fair run and a fair shake. It's just not working out, because it seems like he tries to bring in these quarterbacks, they don't work out,
right?
And then you get all these hype about some of these QBs, and it doesn't work out, and then they go and play Ohio State, and they're like the 11th team in the country, and they're one game away from going to the Big Ten title game, and they fail miserably. Yeah. So if you fired Lloyd Carr for the same thing, how does Jim Harbaugh keep getting the same free pass?
Right. And the main issue is that they haven't recruited well the last couple of years either. Like, as far as we're talking about, Michigan should be in the conversation for the top 20 players every single year. And for what I'm seeing, I mean, if you look at some draft results over the last couple of years, it'll show that they have some defensive players that might have been able to jump in there. But as far as offensive skill players or, quarterbacks or, even offensive linemen, they haven't done the greatest job.
Exactly. Key says he was brought in there to beat Ohio State, and he couldn't even do that. He's absolutely right.
Yeah, facts.
And Phil says Michigan isn't paying a $12 million buyout. They'll probably ride out his deal to the end of next season. You could be right about that too.
But I also would challenge from that $12 million buyout for a I will call them an organization, because people like to liken these universities to, they're public institutions. No, they're a business. Michigan makes tons and tons and tons of money off of their football team. Probably going to, even through this pandemic, make more than $12 million. $12 million is chump change. Let's say, for example, some of these boosters and some of these, you and I both know that when it comes to college, you've got a set of people you have to please. And if you don't please those people, you're not going to be able to really do much movement on there. So if the right people come in and tell hey, you got to get rid of this guy, $12 million is not that bad. They can make that happen.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, dude. So this show's probably going to be football heavy, because there's really not a lot going on outside of football.
Unless you want to talk some UFC. I mean, I do have some UFC questions for you if you want. I was going to save them for us for some big cards, but I do have some UFC questions. Do you want to jump into those?
Let's get into it.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you and I both know that we're going to spend a ton of time on football, and we'll do the previews as we usually do and start to review some of the games from last week. But
hey, by the way, dude, I could not have had a worse week picking games than I did last week.
Oh, really? I was about to ask. Was it both of us or just you?
It was just me, dude.
Oh, really? I thought you and I had some good games.
It was both of us.
Yeah.
Nah, it was not both of us.
Okay.
I knew that the ship was gonna sink when Cincinnati managed to beat Tennessee the way they did.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not going to go
And the
well.
Minnesota game, too. That was the same exact thought I had when Minnesota pulled away. I'm like, both of us are going to do bad on our picks this week. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, that was another one, too. Because I was listening to that game on the XM satellite radio.
Yeah.
And because I'm in a fantasy football league, and my cousin's like, man, Dalvin Cook's going insane.
Dude, he went
So
off.
what are you talking about? Because I have Dalvin Cook, and
Yeah.
I look up, this man has 4 total TDs.
It was nuts,
I was like,
dude.
what the hell? So, and then you know how much Green Bay Packer fans absolutely give me gas.
Yeah.
So, I know they're probably flexing their muscles because, like, oh, look, we came back and beat San Francisco last week. Yeah, San Francisco's missing like 80 players, and then you
Yeah,
want to
have fun
flex
with
about that? Like,
Yeah, have fun
I'm
with
telling
that.
you, dude, Packer fans give me gas, dude. Give me so much gas, it's unreal.
We're definitely going to get into that because I got some gas for them this week as well. Nick, I don't know if you saw it, but last week, Anderson Silva, man, I don't know, dude. I just, a part of me is a UFC fan, and it's like you love to see Anderson Silva fight. And a part of me after that fight was like, this guy's got to stop.
Yeah. It's very Chuck Liddell-ish. Remember how great of a run Chuck Liddell was on when he was the light heavyweight champion? Everyone was considering him the best pound-for-pound fighter. He was knocking people out left and right. The minute he lost to Rampage Jackson, he lost something. Because the storyline with Chuck Liddell was, we all knew that Chuck Liddell had amazing power in his fists. We knew that he was a knockout artist. And the one thing about Chuck was that his takedown defense was insane.
Yeah.
And going into his run, he had only 3 losses. One was to Rampage, one was to Chuck Liddell, and for the life of me, I can't think of what the third one was. So he avenged the one that I can't think of. Then he avenged the one against Randy Couture, and I think that's what made him the light heavyweight champ. But when he ran into Rampage Jackson, Jackson knocked his ass out.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, remember, he struggled against Jardine, and then he just started taking L's to a point to where Dana White pretty much did exactly what he did right now with Anderson Silva by saying, no, I will not let him fight in the UFC anymore. Yeah. And that's where, and Anderson Silva's in the same boat. We know how much of a great run he had, after he beat Rich Franklin for the middleweight championship, and he was arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC. And he takes the L against Chris Weidman, and he's not been the same since. Now, we give him credit for stepping in when he fought against Bones Jones, and I forget who's supposed to fight Bones.
I think it was DC when DC had to come out, right?
Say it again.
Was it DC? I think it was one of the DC fights. DC had to pull out last second, I think.
I think so, yeah. And so he had to pull out last second. Anderson Silva said, I'll step in and fight him. And, I mean, obviously he lost, but, you saw the fight against Uriah Hall on Saturday, and I think Dana White's doing the right thing for not just for the UFC brand, but I just think also for Anderson Silva himself. And it's like, dude, it's just time. It's time. And then, and I don't mean to go off subject, but then thinking of Chuck Liddell, I don't know if you noticed, some many months ago, I guess Liddell and Tito Ortiz had a final
America
fight to the finish.
Yeah.
And Tito actually beat him. And I'm like, this is the fight that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
They went to Bellator because Bellator at that point will pretty much sign and fight anybody. And
Dana
did
was
anyone
pissed.
really care about Tito versus Chuck Ford?
No. And Dana was pissed about that. He was super pissed that anybody would let Chuck and Tito fight. And, say what you want about Dana. I don't think Dana's a saint. I don't think Dana's an angel. But one thing that you can say about Dana is that he's able to put away the business side and at times and say, you know what, this is more than business. You obviously heard him talk about how he thinks Anderson should be done. One thing that he did say was he hopes his family convinces him into it because, Brazilians are a different breed, first of all, bro. These Brazilians, man, they don't, these dudes do not have, I'm going to retire, this is my retire, Anderson, in his mind, is always going to be a fighter. And in his mind, he's always going to be ready to step in and fight. I think it takes a guy like Dana to say, no, we can't do this anymore. And he mentioned it. He said, listen, if he wants to go to another organization and try this out, go right ahead. I think Anderson should stick to jiu-jitsu, dude. The problem with Anderson right now is he didn't make the money in his heyday that he should have. That's the real main issue, is that he is making more, and that's also, Dana, this is the dickish side of Dana. He was like, well, you don't want to even know how much I've been paying Anderson to fight for us the last couple of years. And let's be honest, he hasn't had many quality fights the last couple years. I think he has one against Derek Brunson that he won. He had that really nice one against Bisping where he knocked out Bisping and Bisping knocked him out and came back and won, and then Bisping won the belt off of that. So to me, Anderson, and remember that Adesanya fight that he had a couple years ago when Adesanya was still not really, Adesanya was not Adesanya yet, and he went to fight Anderson, and he picked him apart. The thing is, Uriah Hall is like, well, I finished Anderson and Israel didn't, so I did better against Anderson, and I guess I could see where his math is at, but I don't exactly see it that way. And, I do want to mention it was a really nice moment in the cage after, and, Uriah and Anderson, came together, and it was just, lots of waterworks and lots of, Uriah said sorry. Like, anytime you look up at your opponent after you just beat the shit out of him and you say sorry, it's probably time for that guy to go.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And, yeah, dude, and I guess I can kind of see what Uriah Hall is saying too. Like, hey, I'm the guy that ended Anderson Silva's career, but don't count your chickens before they hatch, because you never know if Anderson's gonna try and come back for one more. And if it's not with the UFC, it could be with Bellator, who, like I said, seems to grab all the scraps that they can sometimes from UFC and try to make some type of dream fight that ultimately nobody really cares about.
And watch out for ONE FC too, because those motherfuckers are all about gimmicks, and they love that in Japan. And I don't think Anderson has done a lot of Japanese stuff, so introducing him to that market might be big for him. But you mentioned, go ahead.
I thought you brought up a great point about the Brazilians being a different breed, because how long did Vanderlei Silva fight before he finally called it a career? We know how much of a beast he was in Pride, and then he had some moments in the UFC, but man, he took like 6-7 knockouts in a row before he was finally done. Yeah. And then you look at the legend Royce Gracie. Yeah. I remember Royce Gracie was such an absolute monster, in the beginning of the UFC. And then he was almost a shell of himself, but he was still going after guys trying to prove that, hey, my jiu-jitsu still works in the UFC. And I know he took some L's along the way. So you're absolutely right, dude. Like, I feel like the Brazilians never know when to quit. They could be like 57 years old, but if they think that you can get a guy, who's 25 and eager to knock somebody out on the ground, you could break their arm or choke them out with the Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So I agree with you 100% in that aspect.
It's funny you mentioned Vanderlei, because Vanderlei was the one example that I think Dana brought up, which is that Vanderlei can barely speak anymore. That apparently people who speak Portuguese with Vanderlei say that he can barely speak anymore because he's taken so much head trauma. And I think that's the last thing that anybody wants to see Anderson go through, because he can be a real ambassador of the game moving forward. I think the problem right now with the UFC is they aren't capitalizing on some of these legends like they should. What Dana should be doing, instead of convincing Anderson to retire, is to give him a full-time job with the UFC as an ambassador. That would be like, killing two birds with one stone. The guy will stop fighting, and we get to use his star power to plug our fights. And this is a guy, Anderson, who's fought Israel Adesanya. He's fought some of the best guys that are still fighting right now. He can have some, and I think the one thing with Anderson is that his English isn't very good. Remember there was that 10-year stretch where people didn't think that Anderson spoke English, and he did. He just never spoke English. Like, there was a 10-year stretch where he pretended like he didn't speak English, and then one day he did an interview and he was speaking perfect English. So yeah, I think the UFC needs to do a little bit better job with that. Like with DC, like what they did with DC, Nick. Before they knew DC was on his way out, and before they did that, they propped him up in many ways, making him a commentator, giving him a show, letting him do the detail on ESPN. There's plenty of things you can still do with Anderson without having him get hurt by fighting.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, and and that just shows to what kind of character that Anderson Silva is. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't think he could speak English either, because in all of his post fight interviews, he would say something like, he'll say like 3 words of English and then his translator would have to. So I didn't think he could speak English either.
Yeah.
But like I said, that goes to the character of what Anderson Silva was, especially in that run.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, dude. What they did with DC, you're right. They made him a commentator. They gave him a show and all that. And, DC's no slouch.
No.
Here's a guy that was, say what you want about Strikeforce or whatnot, but he was the light heavyweight and heavyweight champion at the same time in Strikeforce. And, I know I clown Strikeforce especially when it comes to Nick Diaz, but they had some real good heavyweights.
Oh, yeah. At that time?
Strikeforce. Yeah. I thought the heavyweight division at that time was like the meat and potatoes of what made Strikeforce what it was. So, so he was no slouch in there. And yeah, so an ambassador position or, something, to kind of promote future stars that might be coming up from Brazil.
Right.
And so I'm with you on that. And, I think you're right, where this would be a great time to put Anderson in a position where he's going to get paid. He's still involved with the UFC, but we don't have to see him getting knocked out, because this is not the Anderson Silva that you and I grew up to watch.
No, and that's kind of the saddest part about it too, is like, even I remember, it's funny, I was in Vermont with my buddies when Anderson fought Israel, and this was in Israel was a nobody, and I told my buddy Amr, he's one of my only friends who watches UFC, and I told him, dude, watch out for this Adesanya guy, because I'm telling you, he's going to go crazy. And all he did while we watched is just pick apart Anderson. There's a lot of people who say he didn't knock out Anderson on purpose, that he didn't want to knock out Anderson, similar to, and I want to talk with you about this, because, we didn't talk about it last week with Khabib, but, people saying Khabib would have had the armbar and could have broke Justin's arm, but that he had heard earlier in the week that Justin would never tap, and that he would take a broken arm and just fight the rest of the fight with it, and he knew that Justin's family was there, so instead of going for the armbar, he went for the triangle just to choke him out and make him go to sleep, and it would be better for his family to see him go to sleep and wake up than to see his arm broken in half. So I'm not sure how much I believe that. I'll be honest with you, Nick. I'm not sure how much I believe. DC told the story. DC and Khabib are very close, and DC said he spoke to Khabib, and Khabib said he did all of this on purpose. I'm not sure if I'm a believer in that, quite frankly, like that he was like, in the fight, let me not break his arm, let me choke him out. What do you think of that?
I see what you're saying, but I think there might actually be some truth. This is the same guy that called the submission before the fight even started.
True.
Remember, he said that I'm going to submit Gaethje in this fight. He didn't say when he was going to do it. He just said he was going to do it. Yeah. So maybe he's right, because if you have a guy at mercy and you know that you're going to break his arm, and Justin Gaethje has got that kind of heart where, he'll go through it. And it's not like we haven't seen, guys go through injuries. I mean, we saw Thiago Santos, who's supposed to be fighting here pretty soon, about a year and a half or so ago, fight on basically one leg for 3.5 rounds. Yeah. A lot of the time these guys don't know when to quit, when it comes to the title or the prize or whatever's on the line, unless they tell you, I can't go, they're going to keep going. Yeah. So maybe Khabib's right. Or maybe DC's right. Maybe Khabib was like, I could break his arm, but, Khabib seems like that kind of guy. He true. Almost kind of reminds me a little bit of a Masvidal, because I feel like Masvidal's that same kind of guy, where it's like, if you're humble, it's like, okay, if you go out and you're gonna fight Jorge Masvidal. If you're Ben Askren and you're just sitting there just talking shit the entire time, then you're going to get what happened to you, which is pretty much 2 knees to the face, 2 punches to the face while you were knocked out from the knees, and just pretty much be made fun of. Or you can have other fights where he'll just go in, he'll humbly fight you, he'll beat you if he can, like when he fought for the BMF title against Nate Diaz. He respect Nate Diaz. He know Nate Diaz is a real fighter. for lack of a better way of putting it. And there was a lot of respect amongst the two with the way that the fight ended. A lot more respect than what you got from Ben Askren.
Yeah.
I think Khabib's the same guy. I feel like that they're kind of in that same level. So maybe DC's right. Maybe Khabib was like, nah, I don't want to embarrass him in front of his family, so I'll just choke him out, because he went from the armbar to the triangle real quick.
And we mentioned it last week. Justin went to sleep quick. That just shows how good that grip was, because he was out in 8 seconds. Like, you usually have to see a little bit of a struggle, and but it was like just right away the clamps went in, and we talked about it. He eventually tapped within like 5 seconds. So that just shows you, like, this is a dude who's a bad motherfucker who is getting choked out, and he got choked out so quickly that within 3-4 seconds the breath was coming out of his lungs to tap, and within 7 to 8 seconds this dude was asleep. Now, the one thing I will challenge people on, Nick, is that you don't take damage from going to sleep. That's where I took exception to the statement, because they were saying, Khabib said, well, you don't take damage when you go to sleep, but he wouldn't have been able to fight for 6 months if I broke his arm. He's right about the arm thing, but I'm telling you, man, we're going to find out some stuff soon. Going to sleep is not good. Going to sleep is like your body telling you, hey, we're about to die, so I'm going to shut this shit out real quick. So to me, we don't know the effects yet.
And that choke was so good that he couldn't even give a confident enough tap.
No, it was like, and then that's it,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was so limp that I don't think the referee knew if he was trying to escape or if he was trying to tap. Like literally, you had to hear DC yell, "Hey, he's tapping!" for him to finally be like, "Okay, let the hold go." So, yeah, dude, Khabib's a monster, dude. He's definitely the GOAT. You can't tell me nothing. And as we said last week, dude, the John Bones Jones nut huggers can blow it out of their ass with that nonsense.
And John has realized how stupid he sounded, and he's been a little bit less vocal lately, which I'm happy to see, because John just needs to get off social media, dude. Like, John, this is a guy who has rehabilitated his image with a lot of the fans, Nick. I mean, this is a guy who got caught doing steroids, got caught doing coke, was a notorious guy who didn't train. He hit a pregnant woman with his, he got in a car accident with a pregnant woman and ran. Like, this is a guy who has had, like, really bad things happen to him and really bad looks, and he's had to rehabilitate it. And time again, he still comes out and tries to challenge people and tries to, put on this persona that he's this godly man. And I'm sorry, dude, I don't buy it. Like, John Jones has some demons, and I think one of those demons was manifested when Khabib took the spotlight from him. I think John does not like the spotlight being off of him. I think he really likes the spotlight being on him. And I think he, the one thing that I heard that really made sense to me was that it was selfish of John. Because here's the thing, you and I both know this. We as fans suffer from recency bias. Anything that's happened recently is the best thing that's ever happened, right? So all John had to do was understand that, you know what, this is something that Khabib deserves. And that in reality, if and when John comes back and starts to put W's in the column, they're going to really go back and say, I know we talked about Khabib 3 months ago, but now that we've seen John again, maybe he's the GOAT. And the conversation continues, right? So I think that was the most sort of alarming thing to me, was that John was just he was like a kid who had the spotlight taken off of him and threw a temper tantrum to make sure that didn't happen. So, and speaking of John Jones, Nick, because I do want to transition into some news that we've seen recently, which is the middleweight division is going to be in limbo for a little while, Nick, because the problem right now is that Israel has cleaned out the division, and now he's going to go up to light heavyweight and fight Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight title. I think the plan is obviously the plan for Israel is to beat Jan and then tell John to come back and get his title, which again leaves the middleweight division a little bit of limbo, because Jared Cannonier, who is supposed to go out and beat Robert Whitaker for the title. Whitaker wins that. And I don't think anybody, I don't know about you, but I'm not really super excited about the prospect of a Whitaker-Adesanya rematch. And I think the UFC recognized that, and they decided to make it happen. So it is going to be Adesanya versus Blachowicz for the light heavyweight title. The middleweight division is going to go in a little bit of limbo for a little while. And again, I think the plan for the UFC is to either try and make that John Jones Stipe fight happen, or give John one fight before then. The problem with that is, like, what if John loses that? Are you going to let him go back to light heavyweight and fight Israel for the title? Like, there's a lot of holes in this plan, but it seems like Dana, that's his plan right now.
Yeah, and I hope that plan doesn't go through. You know how I feel about if there's a John Jones. I guess at the end of the day, I don't know, maybe it's just all about the money. I guess he knows that, John Jones versus Stipe would probably produce more money than, Stipe versus my boy Ngannou.
Ngannou, yeah.
And I still think that Ngannou is more deserving of the title than John Jones. But I guess, it's a name fight.
Yeah.
And I'm still I want to see John Jones go against, if Brock is really serious about coming back to the UFC. I don't know if he is or not, but if he is, that's who John needs to face.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, dude. A lot of these guys that have jumped, to the UFC, like, we knew that Brock Lesnar was a wrestling beast when when he jumped to the UFC. In the same breath, he lost his first fight. He lost that fight to Mir.
Yeah.
But then he learned from it, and he became the heavyweight champion of the world.
That's true.
And I think the same thing needs to happen to John Bones Jones. Like, to put him, just for him to jump to heavyweight, to put him in the championship picture, I think it's a mistake. And I think it's disrespect to a lot of the heavyweights that are waiting for Stipe to stop coming with the excuses and finally come up and actually do something.
Right.
Because that's what it is. My this, I want to fight DC one more time. And now that it's over, here's a guy in like Francis Ngannou. Yeah, he may, you may have beaten him once before, but this is not the same Ngannou that you fought a couple years ago.
Yeah.
This is a different Ngannou. This is a more improved Ngannou. So I think Ngannou's in line. I would say Derek Lewis, but even Derek Lewis was like, I'm not ready to fight for the heavyweight championship. And that's much respect for that, because there's some people that would see that and see the payday and think it's okay.
Right.
And then you get into, a Chuck Liddell or Anderson Silva or Vanderlei Silva, when you start getting into, consecutive losses to where Dana White's like, dude, are you even worth it staying here in the UFC?
Yeah.
So I think Derek Lewis is smart with that. But, and there's a couple other guys I think that are in line. So to make it Bones versus Stipe, I think would still be kind of disrespectful to Ngannou.
Yeah.
But I guess if at this point, if you're trying to get sales and money and merchandise, which basically what it seems to be, I guess then John Jones versus Stipe is it. But at the same time, look at it like this. If Adesanya does go out and beat Blachowicz for the title, at this point, if you're John Bones Jones, do you continue to run and prepare for the heavyweights, or do you actually now challenge Israel, who has been talking smack with you now for almost the last 8 months, and say, here I am. I have the title that you vacated. I beat the guy that you were supposed to be fighting, and now I'm calling you out. Or does Bones Jones do what he's been doing for a couple of times now, which is running away and doing new adventures, which is the heavyweight division, to avoid a guy who could challenge him for that, greatest of all time and put you in a whole nother spot. So we'll see though. But I'm very interested in Adesanya taking on Jan, because I think that's going to be a good fight, and I'm anxious to see how Israel can work at 205.
Yeah, me too. I mean, Israel apparently is saying that he is not going to have a problem with the weight difference, that his power will translate, but I'm really worried about that, because with Jan, it's knuckles connect and you're going to sleep. And with Izzy, it's going to take, chopping down the tree to make that happen. So I agree with you. I think it's interesting, but I think I've been resigned to the fate, Nick, that the UFC is very, very, very invested in just making the big fights happen, whether or not they are, the fighter fantasy. There's a huge sort of contingent around the UFC that is trying to convince Dana and the decision makers and Sean Shelby and all these matchmakers that the UFC fans want to see good fight matchups, not necessarily names. They want to see stylistic matchups. They want to see, good on paper matchups. And we haven't seen a ton of those lately. Like a lot of those, big premier fights, other than maybe Khabib and Gaethje, because, they had some contrasting styles. But clearly the UFC is going after the big bucks here. And, as far as light heavyweight is concerned, you've got Santos, who you mentioned, Thiago Santos. I think this is the first fight since the John Jones fight, which we both know really messed up that guy. It was like torn every CL he has in his leg, and he's back, and he'll be fighting a Glover Teixeira who is on a win streak. Glover, we were making fun of him a couple years ago because you're like, dude, what is this dude still doing here? And then even up until, maybe recently this year, he's on a little bit of a fight streak and has beat some, pretty nice guys. So we'll see about that. I don't know. I don't know how much can change in the rankings because Thiago is not yet considered to be that guy quite yet to jump up. But, you're also going to have Arlovsky on this card. You're going to have a couple other light heavyweights on this card. So I think the hope is that the light heavyweight division sort of comes together after this Adesanya fight with Blachowicz. We'll see who the champ is. I think really the hope is maybe that either John finds a way to win against Stipe, or John fights somebody like Ngannou or Stipe, fights the winner of them, whatever, and maybe takes that heavyweight title. And then Izzy, with 2 titles, can take that and challenge John to sort of a super fight with 3 titles, not necessarily on the line, but 3 titles involved. That, on paper, you and I are like, oh, great, all right, perfect, let's make that happen. But I think a lot has to happen between now and then in order for that to make sense.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, all right. I mean, the rest of the year, too. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the rest of the year is a little underwhelming, man. It's like, Islam Makhachev versus Rafael Dos Anjos is the next UFC fight night. That's next week. You've got some Dana White Contender Series, which have been tremendous, actually. There was 4 knockouts on the Contender Series on Tuesday, including one of the nicest ones I've ever seen. It was like a front axe kick that actually went in. So, and then Davison Figueiredo versus Perez to close it out. They still haven't decided what December is going to look like, but I think the idea is maybe December they can get 1 or 2 good cards in there. So not really that much to look forward to for the UFC, quite frankly.
Yeah, dude. I still think that they're trying to save for the alleged super fights, or 'cause remember about a month or so ago we were sitting here talking about what were you talking about? Oh, how the UFC were supposed to come with these super fights before the year is over with. Yeah. I mean, I'm almost feeling like that's damn near in limbo at this point.
It's hard. It's hard to imagine.
Right. Like all the fights that I feel like that you and I have been sitting here predicting that should happen are not happening, and it's just like I feel like it's a lot of stalemate. So. I mean, I know the with the COVID still showing its ugly head and hanging around. I know it has a lot to do with it, but man, like Dana White's got to start jumping the gun on this at some point.
Yeah,
like you said,
I think you hit it on the head though. You hit it on the head though. They can't make money off of these. That's why they're not doing it.
Right. So,
all right.
It's basically at this point, it's like, well, we'll throw these little fights in there for these guys to kind of build up their resume, and then hopefully when things get back together, the resume will be built. But man, dude, like give me something to watch, So that's why I think I'm pretty excited about Jan versus Israel.
Yeah, that's going to be a good fight, I think, either way. And the UFC also we've given them credit before on this show. They've done a tremendous job during the pandemic of keeping shows going and everything like that, for the most part, safely. To be honest, Nick, all sports have. Let's be honest. The bubbles were extremely successful, especially the NBA bubble. The NHL bubble didn't have they had maybe a couple of hiccups, as did the NBA. They had the whole Lou Williams hiccups and stuff like that. But for the most part, they've done a great job of keeping everybody healthy and everybody safe. And I think the UFC is watching very closely to what the NBA and the NHL are about to do, which the NBA now, they went from saying, okay, we might do another bubble, to now saying maybe we will start to have some fans. And you know what? Maybe we'll do, some boxes, and maybe we'll do some, socially distanced ones in the bowl. But, I think the main issue with that is that if you're saying that's going to be ready in December, then we've got to really have a serious talk about pretty much all the other sports organizations, because the NFL at this point, they've had some pretty rough times when it comes to COVID. You and I have looked at the news sometimes on Wednesdays, and you're not sure if a game is going to happen on Sunday because of it. And I don't think we could say that about the NBA or even the NHL, and to a certain extent the UFC either. I mean, the UFC, they've had some fighters who have had to drop out due to COVID-related stuff, but it hasn't ruined any cards for them. So, I don't know, man. I know that there's a huge limbo right now with everything, and obviously, it sounds like we're going to have a presidential handover soon, so I don't know how much that's going to have to do with regulations, because it seems like maybe Trump would have been a little bit more open to letting people do these do these types of organizations in public. I don't know. Dana White was asked about it on Tuesday. He's good friends with Trump, and somebody in the media asked, do you think this will change for sports, change for the UFC? And he said no. So I guess we'll have to see about this.
Yeah, he might be right, because I mean, for like you said, I think the NHL almost borderline. Well, maybe I think the NHL and the NBA both did a great job. I think the NHL players took it a little bit more seriously than the NBA players, because obviously the bubbles for the NHL were in Canada. Canada seems to have a better handle on what's going on than America did. But even while they were down in Florida, outside of the Lou Williams incident where he left for the strippers or whatever,
for the wings,
the NBA
for the wings, not the strippers,
or for wings, excuse me. The NBA actually did a pretty good job with it too. They really didn't have any positive tests with that either. And I'm glad you brought up the NFL, because right now we're seeing the NFL right now are bringing down hammers.
Yeah.
Thor-like hammers. We saw the Raiders get hit not only with a damn near $1 million fine, they were stripped of a draft pick.
6-rounder, yep.
Because of what's going on, and a lot of it seems to be surrounded with John Gruden, why he can't keep that mask on his damn face, or why don't you do what everyone else is doing and wear the face shield?
Right.
And I like Andy Reid. I know, as a big guy myself, I hate sometimes having the mask on my face, because I know sometimes it's harder to breathe in it. So wear the face shield.
Yeah.
Unless you're like that paranoid that certain teams are hiring the lip reading guys so they can read your plays and whatever you're doing. Do wear the flipping face shield if you can't keep the mask up. But and so they're bringing down hammers with that. But and then we saw what happened with Major League Baseball, where you had the Marlins players, they went out, and I think the Cardinals players, they went out, and everyone was just getting nailed COVID wise. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, because they're seeing what we haven't heard as of late, except for maybe that first Kansas City game, because I know that they let their fans in the stands. There was one guy in that Kansas City game that had tested positive for COVID. You haven't heard yet, unless I've been missing it, any fans being tested positive. So I think that the places that are opening up their stadiums are definitely big on the mask, big on the social distancing. It seems to be working. No one seems to be getting sick unless you're the players. So I'm with Dana White. I don't think it's going to affect. I think when the new presidency come in, they're seeing that the stuff's going to work and they won't complain about it.
Yeah, and also it's funny you mention, because the contact tracing that they do with fans, it's hard to do that, dude. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to contact trace every fan that walked into the stadium that day? I think the main thing with that Kansas City thing was they were testing a ton of those people. They were contact tracing a lot of those people. I don't think we're seeing that much anymore, because you're right. I haven't heard many other incidents of fans getting it and giving it to the other people. I think that has a lot to do with just contact tracing. I think we're realizing that it's a lot harder to do contact tracing than we want. I think they were hoping that people, I don't know if you guys got it on Android, but during one of the updates in June on the iPhone, it had a contact tracing feature. And me and about 90% of the people that I know definitely did not opt into that, right? So I think they're starting to realize that it's harder and harder to figure out contact tracing. Maybe we shouldn't look at contact tracing. Maybe we should just kind of focus on what we can do. And, that's the whole thing with the John Gruden thing. I don't even think it's necessarily him wearing the mask anymore. I think it's the protocols, Nick. I mean, we talked about how Trent Brown got it, and then they had to, make the whole offensive line go into quarantine to see if they were going to get it. We're not seeing that a ton from – we're seeing – I think the Bears have had – 4 out of the last 6 weeks, they've had incidents with at least one person, either a player or a coach, getting COVID. Not one practice or game or anything has been affected by it. And I think the main thing is that's how you know they got it under control. But when you have a team like the Raiders who basically, I don't know which game was it that was almost up in the air. Oh, they had to move it with your guys, right, with Tampa Bay, because they weren't sure if the game was going to happen. So when you have shit like that happen, that's when it gets out of control.
Yeah, dude, and I know the Bucs over the last couple of weeks have been hit with the their opponents have been hit with the COVID, because the Giants, I think Will Hernandez last week.
Yep.
Had gotten hit with the COVID, so they had to quarantine another offensive line. So I'm with you on that, dude. And they're saying that what's his name hasn't been getting better. Trent Brown.
Really?
They're saying he's still sick from complications with COVID. So, I mean, God knows if he'll even be back, for the season with what's going on. So, but yeah, you're right. The Bears, I know the Bears have been with it, and it hasn't affected it. It hasn't affected you guys per se. I know that Tampa did it, but this situation's getting so serious that right now they're actually talking about, the NFL has been talking about putting another playoff spot in case if there's any effects with the COVID, or if it affects any games that we need to throw another person in. First off, I thought there was already 8 playoff spots. I didn't think there were 7. I don't know why I thought that they had agreed to 8, and then there would be no first round buys. Right. But apparently I was wrong. It's only 7. So we'll see what they do with that. But the NFL's taking precautions, but like I said, dude, they're bringing down Thor hammers, because at this point, I guess they're getting sick and tired of always looking up and there's a new case because somebody's being hard-headed or stupid, and now they're like, okay, now we got to stop playing, and first victims were the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think it was optics more than anything too. Like, I think they kept looking up and seeing on the news that the NFL had another case and another team had to shut down the facility. And I think optics-wise that's bad, because of the bubble, we didn't see that with the NBA. We didn't see that with the NHL. And now the NFL comes into the fold, and every week it's not only on ESPN, it's on CNN, it's on Fox News, it's on these major outlets. All of a sudden now you're looking at it and you're saying, oh my God, the NFL doesn't have this under control. So I don't necessarily think that's true. I think you and I both know that. I think the NFL has done a pretty darn good job. I think maybe they could have done a bubble, but you and I both know it's very hard to do that bubble with 30-plus teams. And with the NFL, you got a 53-man roster, you've got 20 coaches, you got 20 trainers, you got staff, this, that, social. It's impossible. So I think for what the cards that they've been dealt, I think they've done a pretty good job. And overall, I mean, the whole Trent Brown thing is scary because, I think when you look at the numbers of COVID, it's affected mostly people who are elderly or who have pre-existing conditions or maybe, are, let's say, susceptible to that type of stuff. But Trent Brown, I mean, he's an NFL player. He's a guy who probably, I know offensive linemen are big boys, but I don't think that should have too much of an effect on a guy who basically has been, in the gym room or in the gym or out on the field for the majority of the year. This is a guy who, for all intents and purposes, is a healthy person. So that's the scary part. Is just that we don't know, dude. Like, I saw a college player. I think he was a little lacrosse player or something like that. He died from COVID, and you're like, okay, this shit isn't just like the flu. Rather, it's definitely something that we don't have a grasp on quite yet. But overall, there's been nothing has dipped the NFL, the UFC, or anybody else. I mean, let's be honest, Bellator is just now starting to put on events over the last couple of weeks. They had to stop because, I think maybe it was a money thing, but I don't think they had the same infrastructure that the UFC did. So we will see, but no real changes quite yet, which is good. But let's talk some NFL because there's a lot to talk about. I mean, last week, I kind of want to talk about the Bears and the Saints game first, if we might, because you and I both had.
Yes, let's.
Yeah, we had a little bit of stuff riding on that. I know you really needed the Bears to show up that day to, give your Bucks a nice, comfortable, situation moving forward. And the Bears needed that game, quite frankly, because everybody in the division lost that day, and they needed that. Like, if we wanted any shot of getting back at the Packers and catching up to them, it was last week when you lose to the Vikings. And the Bears looked like the Bears. I mean, we talked about them in the show. Like, Matt Nagy continuously... he went from a guy who was like, wow, creative, offensive genius, look at all of this, to now, like, shotgun pitches. Like, what are we doing here? And clearly, one thing I want to touch on now more than ever, because I haven't touched on it much because I've been blaming a lot of this on Matt Nagy, maybe the Bears just don't have the right players on offense. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think maybe when you look at it, you need another receiver or two. Darnell Mooney's really good, but is he a number 2 receiver in this league? I don't think so. Jimmy Graham, he would make a tremendous backup. Is he a number 1 tight end? Probably not. So maybe it is the players.
I'm glad you mentioned that because one of my good friends, Rob, he's a diehard Eagles fan, put up a story about some quarrel between Nick Foles and Matt Nagy.
Matt Nagy, yeah.
And I didn't really necessarily look at the article per se, but I was looking at some of the comments, and I noticed that a lot of the blame keeps getting thrown at Nagy. And I started to ask myself, at what point does Nick Foles not take some L's with what's going on? So let's kind of, because I listened to the majority of the game while I was DoorDash driving, and certain restaurants that I was able to go to had it on. And in particular was in between the end of the fourth quarter and overtime. Nick Foles in those 2 periods took 3 of the worst sacks you could ever take.
Yeah.
And it blew me, especially in I think it was the 3rd one, where this man had 6 yards to run the football. And you're just standing in the pocket, and the next thing you know, you're getting hit by Cameron Jordan. You had 6 yards in 4 seconds to make a decision that, hey, I might be able to get 6 yards here. And you hold on to the ball, and you end up getting sacked. You can't take a sack in that situation. I'm not saying that Matt Nagy has been calling great games, because he hasn't. But sometimes there might be a reason why he might dink and dunk to try and go deep, to keep guys off their toes, but there has to be execution.
Yeah.
And my problem is that I feel like some of the throws, like Nick Foles on one drive can look like the Nick Foles that won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. And then the rest of the game looked like why he was a bust in St. Louis at the time, why he was a bust last year in Jacksonville, and why, he's been a bust and a backup for the majority of his career. So I think at some point the Nick Foles got to take some accountability for what's going on, but I agree with you, because outside of maybe Allen Robinson, maybe outside of, I think Cole Kmet is going to be a really good tight end if he ever gets targets thrown to him.
Yeah.
It would
Dwayne
be a nice,
Harris, somehow Dwayne
Nick
Harris is on the field, but your first round, one of your premier picks is not on the field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And realize that he can run good routes, and if you actually throw him a decent football, he might be able to catch it.
Yeah.
And maybe an offensive line, like I mean,
yeah,
like
it would be nice.
Outside of Allen Robinson, I still think Montgomery is a good running back.
Yeah.
And
but let me ask you before you move on from Montgomery, does this look like a guy who can be a number one running back in the league? Because he has the most
an offensive line.
Exactly, right? I'm glad you said that, because the guy is getting so much flack right now, and it's like, dude, when you get the ball and there's somebody in your face before you even get to the line of scrimmage, it's kind of hard to run the ball.
Exactly. Because think about it, dude. They actually ran the first of all, the Saints defense is not that good.
No.
I'm just going to go out there and say it's not that good. Okay. So second off, they were actually having really good success against the Saints defense running the football. Montgomery had maybe close to 100 yards in that game. But I know that there was one where he ran off a big chunk. Dude, you can run against the Saints defense.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I will give credit to Matt Nagy about was he stuck with the run, but I felt like there were certain times where he shouldn't have stuck with the run.
Yeah.
Like there was one instance I think it was 3rd and 4 where they had the Saints really reeling. On 3rd and 4, you ran a draw play that netted 2 yards. Like that may not have been a spot to run a draw play on 3rd and 4, thinking that you're going to keep them off balance, because it didn't work. So, I think Montgomery is a good running back. It's just he doesn't have the line, and I know the line got beat up on Sunday too.
Yeah, and let me say this about Nick Foles. I want to give him a lot of flack. But I also want to mention the same thing you mentioned. It's hard to be a quarterback when you got 4 guys in your face every single fucking play, and when you have a left tackle who can't block, a simple swim move. When you got interior linemen who get blown over. When you got interior linemen, Nick, who cannot adjust to a stunt being run, like lineman 101. The guy that you're supposed to block ran to another offensive lineman. Lineman 101. If you have a good coach out there, he tells you, hey, if the guy you're supposed to block runs to another offensive lineman, chances are that's a stunt. So stay where you're at, and that's where you need to be. Rashad Coward happens, boom, Nick Foles is sacked. So I don't want to say Nick Foles is like the issue, but when you bring him in as and touting him as the solution, and then he's doing what he's doing right now, missing basic NFL throws. We talked about like Mitch not being able to make the throw. If you ask me, could Mitch make that 40-yard throw to Darnell Mooney? Probably not. I think Nick probably, did a great job on that throw, but could Mitch make some of the throws that Nick has missed? Absolutely. So all of these fans who are saying, Nick is our saving grace and this is what we need moving forward and Nick is going to be the guy to lead us to the promised land, all I'm seeing is a guy who before this season, if you looked at the season in a bubble and we didn't know about Nick Foles in the past, you might be able to get away with that. But we know Nick Foles. We know he lost to Gardner Minshew. We know that he basically wouldn't have played in Philadelphia if it wasn't for Carson Wentz getting injured. We know that after he left the Rams and having that tremendous season with the Rams and the year that he did, he never really was the same afterwards. So, I'm having a hard time now as a Bears fan, coming to terms with the fact that we benched Mitch and didn't adjust our game plan either. That's the worst part, is this game plan is still made for a quarterback who needs to run. And it's funny, Nick, because since when you have Tom Brady as your quarterback and we've watched plenty of football, since when does skill have anything to do with running the ball? I've seen Peyton Manning run for 6 yards. I've seen Tom Brady run for 6 yards. It's not pretty, but they get there based on instincts, right? Knowing my window is right now. If I don't go now, I'm done. And all I saw last week from Nick Foles is no instincts. And when you have 10 yards ahead of you, if you see that 10 yards and instinctually you got to go and get 6 yards out of that, you can make that play. I don't care who's chasing after you. But if you wait, you can't.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because now that I just tapped into my Wayback Machine, I said something on Facebook about it. I said if that's Mitch,
he runs.
He easily runs for those 6 yards. That's the first down.
Yeah.
Nick just stood there and as a matter of fact, I made that comment because I was waiting for an order and I was watching the game. They had it on TV and I was watching it. And I'm telling you, dude, he's just standing there looking. I'm like, dude, Nick, freaking run the ball. It's right there. The first down's right there. For some reason, you're so gung-ho to want to throw it. That's the one thing that used to frustrate me the most about Jameis last year when he was in Tampa. I can count at least 7 times where I'm like, dude, James, just run the goddamn ball. Do you have 7 free yards, and for some reason you're gung-ho to flip it? No one's asking you to be Michael Vick and run 95 yards for a touchdown. I just want you to run 7 yards, continue to play, get the first down, make a manageable second down, or do something. But when you see that and like you said, your instincts is, well, it's the throw. Mitch Trubisky easily pulls that ball down, and easily that is a first down, and the Bears continue that drive. And I think that was in overtime. And he continues that drive, and the Bears, have a better shot of trying to win the football game. So I think the defense for Chicago held up as long as they could. But at the same time, they did exactly what I kept trying to scream for the heavens, and I hope that Tampa Bay on Sunday night realizes this. Somebody has to keep an eye on Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
Okay? Because Alvin Kamara might be the best receiving back in football. Alvin Kamara may be the toughest receiving back to bring down in football.
Yeah.
I've seen Alvin Kamara's his routine,
it's
his regimen
crazy.
on how he can keep his balance. It's insane.
Yeah.
And seeing how many tackles he breaks when it's in the off-field. That's why if you go back to the game previous when the Saints took on Carolina, one of the many reasons the Saints in that game went like some stupid, like 12 for 13 on third downs in that game. You want to know why? Because Carolina was so stupid defensively that they would have the receivers run these deep routes, and everyone goes with the deep routes. There's Alvin Kamara wide open in the flat. Yeah. And next thing you know, the man's 15 yards, 20 yards downfield, untouched. Yeah. And then you got to try and tackle this man, add on 15 more yards. The Bears, for the most part, especially Trevathan, did a really good job of keeping Kamara in check. until that fourth quarter where the defense started to get a little bit tired and they needed points from the offense. And because that Kamara catch in overtime is pretty much what put the nail in the coffin for Chicago and allowed the Saints to win the game. So I give them all the credit in the world. But man, dude, I thought the defense for the most part really played well in that football game. You know, Drew Brees obviously didn't have a lot of his big targets. And what was the score? Like, it was 13-3 going into a minute 12, but then Drew Brees turned into Drew Brees and got a touchdown. The next thing you know, it's 13-10. So I think if you take a lot of things out of the game is that, as you've been mentioning over the last weeks, it's this defense has really been is what made the Bears, what are they now, 5-3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, we know that Nick Foles came back against Atlanta, but we also know that that's been happening to Atlanta all season long. You know, we know that, you know, Nick Foles struggled against the Colts. You know, he didn't have his best game, even though they beat Tampa. He didn't have his best game in that. So you're going to wear out this defense in the next 2 weeks if somehow Matt Nagy can't find a much better offensive game plan to really at this point kind of help the offense out. But as mentioned, dude, Nick Foles, if you see that it's 3rd and 4 and you got 6 yards, dude, run the goddamn ball.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult.
No, and
It's
I'll
really
take it.
not.
I'll take it a step further than you did. I think we have already burnt out this defense because, first of all, another huge issue that I'm going to continue to have is preparation. For the 3rd week in a row, we were really, really badly prepared. Against the Rams, I mentioned this, the one thing the Rams do, the only thing the Rams do is motion across the line of scrimmage, bootleg, and throw it to the guy motioning across. That's the only thing they do. They did that 10 times with success against us. Look at any other team. Look at the next week and the next opponent the Rams played. They got stopped, and easily it wasn't even a close one. Last week, you and I, as unpaid observers, notice, dude, the only thing New Orleans does really well right now is throw the ball out of the backfield and do a really good job of getting Kamara open. And we noticed that. And then the Bears didn't notice that. You know, that's a huge issue, dude. It's a huge issue. Chuck Pagano cannot continue to keep his job based on how much people like him. I'm sorry, dude. I get he's a well-liked guy. He beat cancer. Everybody loves him. Everybody's pro Chuck. I love Chuck Pagano as a guy. But he deserves to be fired at this point because the defense, first of all, this defense was not bend, don't break under Vic Fangio. You remember, it was a very much every single play is we're going to eliminate the best possible play for you, and we're going to make you do the most difficult thing to get yards against us. And that's what Vic does really well. It's the complete opposite against with Chuck Pagano. I mean, how many times in that game did you see a Bears cornerback 10 yards off of a wide receiver? I mean, since when in this league do we let receivers go not only free from the line of scrimmage, not only free from the 5-yard mark, but for 10 yards, they're not hip-to-hip with somebody? That is a major problem, dude. I don't care who you are. And the skill level has already shown we can do this with the skill level alone, but Khalil Mack can't do this alone. Akeem Hicks can't do this alone. Roquan Smith and Danny Trevathan, as good as they've been in the pass game, the problem is they get softened up for the run game by being so good at the pass game. So when you have Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith running across the field every single play, and then the next play you run a stretch right, it's going to be really hard for Roquan to be able to get into the hole and stop that play. It's just a continuous frustration now. And what it's going to take, unfortunately, is for this team to completely implode. The problem is, and this is why I brought it up, because I want to get your opinion on this, the Bears are probably not going to be bad enough the rest of the season to fire anybody. That's like between the last layer of hell and the first layer of hell. Like, you are not exactly in the worst place, not exactly in the best place. You're just smack dab in the middle of hell, because you got the Titans this week, who look like a more beatable team than they did 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And honestly, we'll get to my predictions, because I think the Bears are going to find a way to pull it out somehow, because that's just the Bears. But then you got the Vikings. I know they beat the Packers, but I'm not really expecting that version of the Vikings to show up every week. You got 2 left against the Packers, which are always tough games. You got the Lions, the Texans, another one against the Vikings, so you'll have 2 against the Vikings, and then you close it up against the Packers. So we're talking about 2 games against the Vikings, a game against the Texans, a game against the Lions. Granted, the Lions look better now. So you got 4 really winnable games for the rest of the season, and 4-ish tough games for the rest of the season. I just don't see this team, falling any worse than like 8-8. And if you are 8-8, it's really hard to make a case against or a case for firing everyone. But that's where I'm at right now. We need to fire everyone. Ryan Pace is bad. That's it.
Yeah, and I think also what needs to be done is unless there is a head coach who's available, a la Jim Harbaugh, or unless someone gets fired or quote unquote moves on from the organization, I'm with you, dude. I think they go if the Bears end up at 500, the thought process is we'll give them one more year.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Because I still think that they're going to hang on to, okay, so it's like we win 12-4, whether you say it was because of Mitch, whether you say it's because of the defense, whatever, we win 12-4. We potentially could have gone to the Super Bowl, but a double doink got us out. Fine. Then the next year, you kind of get decimated with injuries. You're not as good. Fine. Then you go into this year. Now you got the quarterback change. Now you kind of got, because people say that Mitchell Trubisky wasn't really Matt Nagy's guy. So do the Bears now allow Matt Nagy to quote unquote get his guy, which apparently is supposed to be Nick Foles, but now they're arguing and beefing with what's going on. So I think at the end of the day, I think they're going to give the excuse, well, we're going to give Matt Nagy and Nick Foles one full off season and one full preseason and one full camp to work with these guys, and we'll give Ryan Pace, and if we don't make the playoffs or at least even sniff the NFC title game, everybody's out of here. We're going to re-up. So I think it's going to take some big name or big miracle in order for the Bears to fire Matt Nagy and or Ryan Pace, and then pretty much clean house. Because if Harbaugh, let's just say for conversational purposes, let's say Harbaugh does leave Michigan, and let's say he does come to the NFL, I would see Matt Nagy immediately getting fired, and then I would see the Bears. And we'll maybe talk about this in the near future, because I've never been a fan of the Rooney Rule. Like, I understand why it's there, but I don't like the fact of giving people false hope because you don't want to get fined from the NFL. Yeah. So that's one of my main problems with the Rooney Rule. But
what do you think about Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator in Kansas City? Because that's the guy I have my eyes on. He's a black assistant. He's been the play caller for them for the last 2.5 years, and has done a pretty good job. That's honestly my focus right now, because what the trend is in the league. Find a young assistant who hasn't had any experience, give them the keys and let them run with it. Right? We saw even with like the Bengals this year. As bad as the Bengals probably should be right now, they have hope. And honestly, probably more hope than I do as a Bears fan. So, and Zach Taylor, not like he's done anything transcendent or anything like that, but you're seeing what he's doing this year. The team is constantly in it, and when they're not in it, it's really just because of a lack of talent. So, I just like Eric Bieniemy more so than anything, because I think he can lead the team.
But the question, wasn't Matt Nagy the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs before he came in? So do you bark up the same tree?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
So
a good point.
it's really is it worth the risk of trying it again? Saying, okay, well, Matt Nagy didn't work, so let's try it here with who you were talking about. Again, it's a we'll see situation, because the reason why I'm saying Harbaugh is because I feel like the Bears are a type of team that needs some type of veteran-like leadership from a veteran-esque coach.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And then that veteran-esque coach is going to bring in some veteran-esque players, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Because, dude, I mean, I just mentioned it. Outside of, like, what are your real skill players? Like, when you look at the Bears offense, like, where are really your skill players? Maybe at running back, maybe at wide receiver, maybe at tight end. That's it.
Yeah.
Nick Foles, I think I will always say that Nick Foles is fool's gold. Outside of Robinson, you don't have any really wide receivers. So, I feel Harbaugh could bring in some guys that will maybe shape up this offense to what the Bears have never been a team where they need some Aaron Rodgers-esque quarterback. You just need some guys that can move down the ball. They have to move the ball down the field, because you know that you have a defense that can stop guys, sack guys, and make even the best offenses look like crap.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
so that's why I said Harbaugh. But I mean, I feel like who I feel like the Bears are? The Atlanta Falcons before they fired Dan Quinn.
Yeah.
In the sense of, think about it, Atlanta has always kind of been like this middle of the road team, where it's like, okay, they went to the Super Bowl. We know what happened to them in the Super Bowl. And then they have these little playoff runs, or they have like these 8-8, 7-9 seasons where you have no grounds to fire Dan Quinn, but you're not bad enough to where you can get a top pick. I think in Dan Quinn's tenure, they only had like maybe one top 10 pick, and they used one, if not two. I think one of them was Jake Matthews, the offensive tackle, and the other one was Vic Beasley. Everybody else has been 15, 17, 20, 14. Yeah. That's where the Bears are right now.
That's true.
Where you were like that one piece away from going to the Super Bowl, and now you're kind of that middle of the pack team, to where, obviously you traded a couple of first round picks to get Khalil Mack. Yeah. But even then, those picks were really only 15, 17. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. I just think that the Bears need to have one of those Atlanta-esque seasons where they start off the year like 0-6, and then that's how the Bears are going to get rid of Matt Nagy. Unless some Jesus miracle happens where some big name coach comes in and it's a must-have guy that the Bears need to get, I think you're stuck with Matt Nagy for at least one more year.
Yeah, and that's why I think maybe Ryan Pace will be the scapegoat for them this year, because they need to fire somebody if this doesn't go well, right? It can't be. Yeah. It can't be. It's either Pagano or Pace, and the reason why I think it's Pace is because, what did Matt Nagy say when they got rid of Jordan Howard? He's not my kind of running back. I need this kind of running back. So what did they do? They used draft capital to trade up and get David Montgomery. We're seeing what Montgomery has done. He's done fuck all because he doesn't have an offensive line that can do anything for him. Anthony Miller. Oh, well, you know what? I like Taylor Gabriel, but, we really want somebody who could do X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool. Well, let's trade up for Anthony Miller. The guy's playing 30% of the snaps. A 6th-round pick beat him out this year, and he can barely stay on the field. And quite frankly, he thinks he's Antonio Brown. Like, that's what bothers me about this guy. Is like, he gets a first down and he's like dancing and doing the first down, and it's like, dude, you just got here, bro. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Put the ball down, go back and line up. Like, it bothers me to the point where this team has wasted draft capital. We've wasted salary cap. And I'm going to tell you, before we move on to our games, I'm going to tell you my absolute nightmare scenario. And the way that things have been going in 2020, this is probably how it's going to go. But the absolute nightmare scenario is that the Eagles lose the next 3 or 4 games and Doug Peterson gets fired. Matt Nagy gets fired at the end of the season. The only person that I think is probably guaranteed to stick around next year is Nick Foles, and one of the reasons why he's guaranteed to stick around is because the money's already paid for, and you don't save anything by letting him go. So you keep him, and best case scenario for Bears fans, we find another quarterback and he's a backup. Worst case scenario for Bears fans, he's a starting quarterback next year. And oh, by the way, Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, so let's hire Doug Peterson to run this thing. I mean, I can already see the fuckery that's about to happen. I already know that Nick Foles is going to stick around. Mitch is going to get let go. And by the way, Mitch is probably going to go to the Patriots and maybe win like 6 Super Bowls or something like that. That's the way that the Bears' luck has been going. That we can't do shit with this guy. You give him to a good coach and a good coaching staff, and he's going to be just fine. I'm telling you that's going to happen.
Bro, let me say this too, man, because I can speak from experience from my own squad, because I remember when Dirk Cutter was our head coach, and between him and Jason Light, when they're all in the draft room, there has to be some type of consensus between your coach and your GM on who to draft. Okay, so if I look at some of the drafts between Light and Cutter, they haven't really been all that great. The year you guys drafted Leonard Floyd, we actually traded 2 spots down so you guys can get Floyd. We drafted Vernon Hargraves III. Neither one of them are on either respective teams.
Right.
Okay, then we drafted Quan Alexander during Dirk Cutter's tenure. He, A, misses so many tackles, and B, is very deceptive in the cover too. We've seen that. We have 1 year where the only person that we had left in our draft, and I think it was 2017, was Ryan Smith, and he's like 4th on the depth chart for defensive backs. So then you look at, here comes in Bruce Arians, right? So Bruce Arians in 2019. So our first round pick last year was
Vita
Vea. And the funny part about it was, this will drive you nuts, but I'm a big Seminoles fan. We all know that. But I like the draft was, the best guy, and not necessarily, who actually Vita was 2018. He wasn't 2019. He was 2018. But that year, that's when Derwin James came out. And Bucs fans were crying the blues because we couldn't get to the quarterback to save our lives. Bucs fans were crying the blues. We need to draft, or not so much Bucs fans, but the Buccaneers fans. We need to draft Derwin James because, he's Florida State. He's a Florida guy. And so instead, what did the Bucs do? They traded down with Buffalo. Buffalo drafts Josh Allen. We get the Samoan bulldozer that's Vita Vea, and they are crying the blues. But this is the same team now that wishes Vita Vea. I mean, I'm not saying that the Bucs have sucked since he's been gone, but that presence is missed from Vita Vea being there. And I don't know why, for the life of me, I can't think of who he drafted in the first round last year.
I'll look it up. Go ahead.
It's gonna nuts.
Yeah, I'll look it up first.
I know. Oh, Devin White.
Oh, it was Devin White. Okay, Devin White. Yeah.
Devin White. Right. Look how good Devin White is. Look how good Tristan Wirfs is. Yeah. You get what I'm saying?
Winfield. Antoine Winfield.
Winfield Jr.
Yeah,
he is good line to be defensive rookie of the year this year. We drafted Jamel Dean, if I'm not mistaken, was drafted last year by Tampa Bay, and I know he has a bad habit of keeping his eyes on the quarterback and not on the wide receiver, but based on some of the Pro Football Focus numbers, he's been one of the better defensive backs in football. So my thing is sometimes it's not the GM. Sometimes it's the coach.
Right.
So maybe it is that you need to get rid of Matt Nagy. And like I said, bring in maybe that veteran coach that can say, nah, we don't need this guy. This is the guy we need. This is the guy I can coach.
Yeah.
This is the guy that I know that can improve. And Ryan Pace ain't going to have no choice but to do it.
True.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, even though he might be the one that can make trades and make moves, he still got to talk to his coaches and stuff and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about. This is what we're were considering, what are your thoughts on, XYZ move. So maybe that's what you need, man, because if you look at the Dirk Cutter draft picks to the BA draft picks right now, in the short 2 years BA's been in Tampa, his draft picks right now have shitted on the majority of the draft picks that Dirk Cutter has had.
Yeah, and that's a good point because
this
Ryan.
This is something to think about.
Yeah, and that's a good point because Ryan Pace drafted really well before, and I wouldn't say really well. He missed on some, but he hit on a lot of picks before Nagy showed up. And then they had that 12-4 season, and then Nagy started to jump in and say, no, I want this guy instead of this guy, or I want this type of guy. But when you look at the Adam Shaheens of the world, when you look at, the Anthony Millers of the world, I'm not ready to give up on David Montgomery, but again, it's about strategy. It's about knowing that, you know what, we only get 7 picks a year, and the Bears don't do really well compensation pick wise, even though this year they should get a lot of comp picks this year between the 5th and 7th round because of free agents that they've lost. We're a team that continuously flushes assets down the toilet in order to bring in guys who now have no effect on what we do. So, that's really the frustration of it. And also, we haven't addressed the offensive line. We drafted James Daniels, who's been a great pick for us, but he's hurt this year. And now you see with no Whitehair and no James Daniels, Charles Leno sucks, Massey sucks, and you don't have backups anymore. And you didn't draft. At least teams in the league, they draft big bodies between rounds 4 and 7. These guys aren't going to be, starters, but you know what? We draft them, we develop them, make them backups, and if they come in, we at least know they have the measurables to stay in there, right? The Bears haven't done that, and now you're looking at some of the backups. These are guys who are like undrafted rookies, guys who have never played in the league before, guys that really don't have any sort of experience in these types of situations. Rashawn Coward, I believe he's a former defensive lineman, so it's like you just don't have the depth that you need to be a team. And by the way, if I haven't made things even grimmer for you Bears fans, we're in cap hell too. You're paying Khalil Mack like a quarterback and a half. You're paying Akeem Hicks pretty well. You gave Kyle Fuller an extension. You gave Eddie Jackson an extension. Charles Leno still has a lot of money left that he's going to be wasting away. You gave, you have Nick Foles, who the money's already paid for by the Jaguars, but now you have Mitch's money coming off. That's not really going to help you very much. So the Bears are in a situation where next year they may have to start cutting loose. And again, Allen Robinson isn't a guarantee. They may not want to or may not have be in the position to re-sign him and extend him. So, we're in big trouble right now if we don't start to turn things around, especially this year. Because, like I said, I think, I don't want to ever root against my team, right? Obviously, I want my team to win every single game. But when you start to go into the WhatsApp groups and you start to talk to Bears fans and you start to talk to your buddies, I think the consensus is that the only way this team gets better is to take a few steps back this year. So, I don't want to see a team 8-8 or 9-7 maybe squeak in and then get their asses kicked by the Bucs or the Packers or whoever it is going to be in the first round. So, let's jump into the actual games because we've talked a lot about the Bears and the Saints game last week, and certainly a big game for both of our teams. But we had another big game on Thursday night. Not really big game. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers are basically going to be without Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle, most of their defense, most of their Brandon Ayuk and some of these other receivers have been hurt, and the Packers just took advantage of that. It was really easy for the Packers. There's really not much analysis to go into, right? Aaron Rodgers just picked them apart, used Devontae Adams as he could, got Aaron Jones involved, even though Aaron Jones was a game-time decision. And speaking of COVID, they've had some COVID-related issues themselves, the Packers, and injuries as well. I think Corey Dillon, their running back, he got COVID. A.J. Dillon, I'm sorry. Corey Dillon is a former more legendary running back, Corey Dillon. No, A.J. Dillon got the COVID. And then Jamal Williams was apparently a little bit too close to him, so they had to rule him out this week. So the Packers looked what we think they were going to look like, right? That's the thing that really kills me is that the Packers have had different coaches over the last 4 years, right? 2 different coaches. But it seems like the offense under Aaron Rodgers is always baseline level here, right? They can go a little bit below there and they can go a little bit above there. But the baseline level is he's going to get Devontae Adams involved. He's going to make sure that, that he switches the plays at the line of scrimmage to really, make it so that the team can work against the other team's defense. But is he doing anything extraordinary throughout these? No. I mean, when you look at what he did to the 49ers, it's like Devontae Adams wide open. Valdez-Scantling wide open. Their offensive line, the Packers, by the way, tremendous. And they still get him sacked. He still gets sacked every once in a while, and they still do, not so good in the running game sometimes, but they have a good offensive line, and all they really have to do is let Aaron do his thing, and that's what they did on Thursday.
Yeah, dude, I agree with you on the point where I think Green Bay took advantage of San Francisco really much being hurt, because if San Francisco was healthy, I think that game would have been a lot closer, because the one thing that Green Bay is still deceptive to is the run.
Yeah.
And one thing that San Francisco almost over the years between Mike McCarthy and even Matt LaFleur right now, they're still deceptive to the run. And San Francisco, remember the one playoff game where Colin Kaepernick put up Hall of Fame rushing numbers against Green Bay. Mm-hmm. And we saw last year where Jimmy Garoppolo only threw the ball 8 times in the NFC title game, and they still beat up on Green Bay 37-8. So that's why I was saying last week that I thought it was crazy that Packer fans were so crazy on wanting to spend assets to bring in Will Fuller, where think about it like this, dude. The Packers' run defense has really not been the same since B.J. Raji retired many years ago. Mm-hmm. He was kind of that stopgap in that 2014 Super Bowl that they won, because their defense was so good with him in the middle. Then you had Clay Matthews coming off the edge, and then you still had A.J. Hawk there in the middle and whatnot. Their defense hasn't really been the same. Like, I know they got the Smith boys out there, but if they can be contained, you can do whatever you want. See no further than last week against Minnesota.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook had an absolute amazing day, and he accounted for all 4 touchdowns for the Minnesota Vikings last week. So I think, to your point, I think Green Bay really beat up on a San Francisco team that just week in and week out just can't stay healthy. Now you're going to lose George Kittle for a lot of weeks with the ankle. Now you're losing Jimmy Garoppolo. He's gone. The secondary hasn't been healthy. Yeah. The front 7 hasn't been healthy. So San Francisco, I know they kind of eerily crept back to being 500, but I'm starting to think that those injuries are really starting to take its toll. It's no fault. My heart is always going to be with John Lynch, and, I root for him always. It's no fault of his. It's no fault of, Kyle Shanahan. It's just, unfortunately, injuries are part of the game, and they're doing everything they can. But I think at this point, San Francisco's going to catch up to them, and you saw it in this game against Green Bay, because Aaron Rodgers does not have that kind of game. And San Francisco is at least 80%.
Right.
They don't even have to be 100%. If they're 80%, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have that kind of game, because he just can't beat the Niners.
Yeah, and even on defense. Let's say they're 100% on defense, but not on offense. I still think it's a closer game.
Yeah, and even when the Niners had Randy Moss, who was past his prime, they still couldn't beat him.
That's true.
So that's what I'm saying, dude. Aaron Rodgers just has not had success in his career against San Francisco, and it would have been the same if they were at least 80%.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. And also, it's worth mentioning that there's only one thing that you can overcome a lot of adversity throughout the season, but the one thing you can't is injuries. It's like when you get injured and you have your star players. I mean, Joey Bosa, Kittle, Garoppolo, Ayuk, Debo Samuel, McGlinchey, their offensive line, their linebackers. They traded Quan Alexander because they just didn't have, they knew they weren't going to be competitive enough. So, yeah, dude, that's the one thing you just can't fight against. So, as you guys probably saw, the Packers won 34-17. Packers moved to 6-2. I wouldn't say a comfortable lead, but a lead in the NFC North, nevertheless. And surprisingly, I mean, San Francisco is only 4-5, but the problem is when you're in that division with Seattle and then to the Rams to a certain extent in Arizona, that's going to be a tough hurdle to climb there. Let's jump into the games tomorrow. Let's go ahead and start with the Bears and Titans. The Titans are 5-2, and they are facing the 5-3 Bears. Titans at home. They are indeed home favorites, 6.5-point favorites. They're getting a lot of guys back as far as for injury is concerned, but one that's up in the air for the Titans is Jadeveon Clowney. I think he's considering possibly having surgery, so we'll see about that. I think it all depends on, how well the Titans do in this game because
no miss on that, bro.
What's that?
No miss on Clowney. Clowney has no sacks this year? $12 million this dude has no sacks.
And the funny part is, remember he was talking about, like, give me a 7-year deal. Like, he was getting mad at, who is it that he went to last year? Seattle. He was mad at Seattle because they went and gave Jamal that deal, but they wouldn't give him that deal. I think we know why now, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and the Bears are just as beat up. Their backup offensive linemen are out. Mitch Trubisky played one play last week and got hurt. So he will be out for the game. And if you're a Bears fan, that's big news because if you lose Nick Foles, good luck with that game. So the Bears right now are in a pretty, position. The one thing that gives me confidence is that the Titans, the last two games, have not been at their best, and obviously the Steelers game is one thing, but when you lose to the Bengals 31-20, I'm sorry, I don't know how that happens. And if you're a Bears fan and if you're a Bears player, you have to be a little bit encouraged by that because all the Bengals did, I mean, the Bengals didn't really do much. We know that their defense isn't very good. All they really had to do was stop Derrick Henry on early downs and pressure Ryan Tannehill on late downs. And they did it. They just got themselves off the field on third down, got themselves off the field, especially on 1st and 10. The way that the Titans kill you is getting 6 yards. They get that 6 yards, and then boom, they can get into their offense. 2nd and 4, maybe throw a play action in there, maybe run it again, get a couple more yards. So if you can stop that, I think you're in a good position. The one thing that really gives me confidence is that loss to the Bengals last week. So I'm going to go ahead and run with the Bears, and I'll take them minus the set. I'll go ahead with both the pick'em and the points.
You said there was 6.5?
6.5-point favorites at home are the Titans. And by the way, why don't you go after you do your pick, rather go through some of our what our record looked like last week. Maybe for me and not for you.
Yeah, dude, I was garbage. Okay, so our records last week, you went 8-5 heads up and 7-6 against the spread.
Ouch.
And then my dumbass went 5-8 last week. I went a whopping 3-10 against the spread.
The spread,
week,
yeah.
I couldn't win to save my life. Freaking Lions blew dick.
Right.
Freaking the Packers sucked.
Yeah.
Titans sucked. The Bills have gone back to being average. They were garbage.
Yeah.
Freaking Lamar Jackson can't throw a pass 10 yards. Jesus, dude.
Yeah, well, I got so many comments on Lamar and on I'm blanking on it, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry. What do you think about this Titans and Bears game?
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the Titans on the pick'em.
Yeah.
But I think the Bears cover.
Okay.
I'm with you on the assessment of the Titans-Bengals game last week, and what we also saw is how good and how much of a competitor Joe Burrow really is.
Yeah.
I mean, Tennessee's defense is no slouch, and I think he threw for damn near, if not over 400 yards last week or something like that. It was something insane.
Mm-hmm.
So the way they came and slapped the Titans in the mouth was amazing. I'm picking the Titans to win the game for two reasons. A, for selfish reasons, and B, for legit reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The selfish reason is because I need the Bears at this point to lose. The Bears losing on Sunday, as much as I wanted them to win, to an extent benefits Tampa, because if some miracle of Jesus we lose this game on Sunday and you guys lose, we'll still be in the playoff hunt, because you guys still have the tiebreaker against us, and we'll still have more wins. So that's the selfish part.
Got it.
But I think the legit part is for the Titans. I think they know what's on the line here, because they have a big Thursday night game coming up against the Colts. So they know that first place for the South is on the line, because the Colts are going nowhere no time soon. And I just think right now, if the defense can step up for Tennessee, I don't see the Bears offensively really hanging with Tennessee. So the focus for me, and you mentioned it, what the Bengals did, if the Bears can do what Cincinnati did last week, which is stop Derrick Henry in early downs, and pretty much at that point what Tennessee's going to do and make Ryan Tannehill beat you, I think the Bears have a chance. But I think knowing what's on the line, I think the Titans come fired up, and I think they beat the Bears, but I don't think they beat them by 7. So I'll take the Bears plus 6.5.
All right, that sounds fair. I think Drew Lock might be a listener of the show. He saw how much disrespect I put on his name last week, calling him Jake Lock, and all he did was come back and beat the Chargers at the last second there, and I believe it was Hamler who got the game-winning touchdown. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to eat my words. He looked good. He looked like, my problem is that there's an eye test with quarterbacks. You don't have to know the guy. You don't have to know his stats, where he came from, what system. If you're a fan, you can watch a quarterback and go, this guy passes the eye test, this guy doesn't pass the eye test. Sometimes the eye test is not a good assessment, right? And the eye test, I think Drew Lock continuously failed for me. But last week, not only did he pass the eye test, but I thought he was surprisingly effective. I know he had a pick. He threw it around 40 times. I think if the Broncos can get to a point where they run the ball more and more consistently and they're not playing from behind, he could be a really good quarterback. So, yeah, the Broncos are visiting Atlanta. Atlanta 2-6. It was a much needed bye for them last week for Atlanta. The real huge issue that I have with Atlanta right now is that they're 4-point favorites at home, and I don't see how that can be the way that they've been playing and the way that the Broncos just came off of playing. Calvin Ridley is questionable, but he should play. Fowler and McKinley, as if the Falcons are trying to tank or something like that, are both out. I think McKinley got in trouble because he went out on Twitter and basically said, like, this team Atlanta doesn't want to trade me. They keep getting good picks in exchange for me, and they don't want to trade me, and came out looking like a little bit of a bitch. But he's gonna stay with them. So it looks like right now 3-4 are Denver Broncos. They're in Atlanta, who is 2-6. I like the Broncos in this one because I just think defensively Atlanta is in a big situation right now. I'm gonna go ahead and take Denver both on the points. I'm gonna hope for the upset on the pick'em, but I just think points wise too, to give them 4 points is one, assuming that they're gonna win by a touchdown or more. I'm not sure about that one, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the upset with Denver.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Knowing Atlanta's track record and the way that they've been playing, I think maybe that win last week for Denver gave them a spark because, we talk about how good the Chiefs have been this year. They're 7-1. We talk about how improved Vegas is.
Yeah.
And then we talk about how good Justin Herbert is, and we talk about how good the Chargers can be because the Chargers this year have had, is it now 4 or 5 games where they've had double-digit leads and have found a way to blow all of them. So with that being said, I think Denver kind of reminded everybody that, hey, we're still in this AFC West as well. And Drew Lock did look really good. And just the way that they came back on LA, I thought was very impressive. And then with Atlanta, I think just this whole team is just a mess.
Yeah.
Raheem Morris is trying his hardest, and I applaud everything he's trying to do. But like you said, defensively, they don't make sense. And then, so offensively, I still think, obviously they're really good. But I thought they dropped the ball by not trading Matt Ryan or not trading Julio Jones.
Yeah.
Because Atlanta, I think, is at a point where they need to either rebuild, retool, redo something. So obviously the way that they're going to get a top 10 pick this year. But then I don't know, whatever top 10 pick they do get, then I start asking myself, okay, well then, are you going to be better than New Orleans next year? Are you going to be better than, because think about it, New Orleans is being New Orleans. Tampa, it's a step better than what they were. And Carolina's even playing very good inspirational ball. Yeah. So if you get a top 10 pick, can you be as good or even better than these guys? Who knows? Yeah. But as far as this game is concerned, I think Denver really played with a spark last week, and we'll go into Atlanta and beat them. So I got them on a setup and plus the 4.
Okay.
Plus, I also want to read a couple comments in the chat. I don't know why I'm just now seeing this, but Christian said the Bears need a whole offensive lineman with the exception of Cody Whitehair. He said it doesn't matter who the QB is for the Bears as long as they have a bad old line. They're not going anywhere, and I'm a Bears fan. That's why Pace and Nagy needs to go after this season. And then Phil said, Nick, if you were wondering why Jim Harbaugh still has a job, it's because James Franklin's seat is starting to burn white hot, and that's the coach, obviously, for Penn State. So we'll still see about that. I don't know, man. I still say Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. It's not working out, I think, the way that maybe Michigan thought it was going to, and I don't see why. I still think he needs to go. I think not so much because I think for Jim Harbaugh, I would be like, you know what? Let me get my ass back in the NFL.
Right. And if it was, and the big thing is they're a premier program. If we're talking about the Illini, okay, Jim Harbaugh, you can keep your job for as long as you want. But when you're talking about a premier top-of-the-line program is what Michigan fans like to say that they are, can you really afford to let this guy continue to do this? I mean, again, it's not like there's a huge silver lining with Jim Harbaugh. He hasn't recruited well. He hasn't done a great job with the offense. He hasn't beat Ohio State. He hasn't beat some of the, even Michigan State last week. That was a game that, they had no business winning. So, at the end of the day, I think you have to look at college coaches with a grain of salt too. We can't continue to make this assumption that college coaches can just jump in and do what they did in the NFL. It's been proven. We've seen it. There's not a lot of guys who are able to do it. I think Pete Carroll is probably the best example of recently jumping and doing really, really well. But otherwise, I don't see a huge amount of examples other than the ones I might be missing of college coaches who jump into the NFL and right away hit the ground running. So I know Jim Harbaugh probably isn't a guy that you would consider a college coach per se because most of his experience comes in the NFL. But yeah, I still think if you're a team like the Bears, for example, you might not be clamoring to go out and get a college coach because, you're thinking, I have to make things make sense. The big thing with Jim Harbaugh is that, again, the Bears and the McCaskies in general love to be in the headlines. They love to have the connections of former Bears quarterback Jim Harbaugh has been, and then they can do the press conference for weeks, and they can have the circle jerk of everything going on there. So, at the end of the day, college coaches, they have a different standard than the NFL coaches. But, I still see Jim Harbaugh, hopefully for him, he sticks around because I think career-wise it might be better for him to step away than to get fired and jump into the NFL. All right.
For sure.
Let's talk Buffalo hosting Seattle. 6-2 are the Buffalo Bills. 6-1 are the Seattle Seahawks, and Seattle is a slight favorite on the road, and they've got a whole host of people out, including Chris Carson, a bunch of defensive guys. I think this is going to be a shootout. I will go ahead and say, I think Seattle takes this one. I'm a little bit scared of the regression of Josh Allen. You and I talked about how, oh my God, he's taking steps forward in this and that. And the last 4 weeks almost, he's had a really rough time. And I think one of the reasons is because, again, we say this all the time, the league adjusts. They got tape on you now, and they know what you do well and what you don't do well, and the league's going to continue to adjust. So I like Seattle in this one. On both, sorry.
What's the spread?
It's -3 for Seattle, so Seattle a slight favorite on the road. But because I think it's going to be a shootout, I think the Seattle will have it by a touchdown or more.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Seahawks as well, -3. I'm with you where Seattle has a lot of injuries and is fighting the injury bug. At the same breath, too, I guess Russell Wilson's record of flying from the West Coast to the East Coast is actually really good. Buffalo's defense has fallen off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And everyone knows how much that I'm a huge fan of Ed Oliver, but man, that defense is – there is no reason the New England Patriots should have been in that game last week.
Right.
Knowing where the New England Patriots are right now, knowing the struggles that they've been having, knowing the storyline around them, that should have been a game where Buffalo could have went out there and imposed their will. And they really didn't, And so, for a team that has, again, Cam is good and all, but no way that team's scoring 21 points. I think Buffalo right now, they're, like you said, they're reeling right now. Seattle is actually kind of on the up, and I thought they had a good win last week, and I like the Seahawks. And I'll say this: if Russell Wilson has a game like he did last week, then I'll start, because I still have Tom Brady as my MVP.
Yeah.
But I'll jump a little bit on the Russell bandwagon if he has another one. But if he sucks, I'm coming after all heads. All heads.
We'll hold you to that, man. All right, cool. Let's go to Indianapolis. A pretty nice matchup in the AFC here. Indianapolis is 5-2, and they're facing the 5-2 Baltimore Ravens, who you and I both said last week we've been pretty unimpressed with, even though they were 5-1 going into that game against Pittsburgh. I think both of us understood that it was going to be a tough game. I think I took Pittsburgh just simply because defensively, Baltimore hasn't been impressive, and offensively, they've been mismanaging and misusing Lamar Jackson so much, and we saw it again against Pittsburgh. When you've got a guy as talented as Lamar Jackson, and you continuously run the same plays, these QB draws, these QB, the sort of fake here, go there, and down the middle. You don't have the offensive line for that right now in Baltimore. So I thought it was one of those things that was really revealing that Lamar does have a long way to go as far as being a passer is concerned, because now we're seeing the team is adjusting to his legs. And Pittsburgh, let's be honest, they knew what they were doing. They went ahead and had somebody shadowing Lamar the whole time. And especially in the red zone, what a cheesy play call on 4th down to say, let's just let Lamar run the ball again. It's such a cop-out to say, let's just continuously ride this guy who's the only thing we have good going on the offensive side right now. So Baltimore 5-2, they are actually slight favorites going into Indianapolis, 1-point favorites. I'm not sure how much that has to do with, Indianapolis being a little bit banged up themselves. They're going to be probably without T.Y. Hilton this week and have some defensive doubts as well. I actually, surprisingly, I like Baltimore in this one, regardless of what I just said. The reason for that is because I'm not sold on Indianapolis yet. I just think when it comes to Indianapolis, that game against the Lions, I thought the Lions shit the bed a little bit more than the Colts went out and grabbed that one. And I just think if you look at the game against the Bengals the week before, they just barely squeaked that one out. You look at the game against the Browns, they didn't do very well. The game against the Bears, if they had a half-competent team, probably would have won that game. So, I think Baltimore finds a way this week, even though Indianapolis defense has been good. I think Baltimore finds a way to get people going. One thing that I will also say before I turn it over is that Baltimore really has a problem right now when it comes to skill position players. Like, you can't just have Hollywood Brown and that's it. You don't have any other wide receivers. You're really heavily reliant on Mark Andrews and tight ends, and they haven't done that a ton this year. That's another huge part, is they don't use too much two tight end sets anymore, which is surprising because the league is adjusting. So, as far as skill position players are concerned, I don't see it for Baltimore. I think Lamar's going to have to do it again by himself, and I think he probably does do that. I like Baltimore, both on the picks and on the points.
And it's exact that reason why I'm taking the Colts this weekend. Because let's not forget, the Indianapolis Colts possess the number 2 defense in the league.
Yeah.
It goes Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and then Tampa. So, and I thought Hollywood Brown made a very good, I think he tweeted out something along the lines of, how can you have soldiers if you don't use them? And I was with him 100%.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of me being out here on the field if all we're going to do is run, and not utilize that? Think about it like this, dude. Calvin Johnson's considered one of the greatest wide receivers in the game. You know what school Calvin Johnson came from, right? Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
What did Georgia Tech run during that tenure when he was down there? That wishbone option trickery, but they still use a guy that is considered to be one of the best wide receivers in the game in a school that relied heavily on the option. The Baltimore Ravens can be the same way. And that's why I made mention, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, where I'm so confused with why J.K. Dobbins is having such a hard time.
Yeah.
You went to Ohio State that ran a similar offense. So you should know the holes. You should know, where to run on an option like offense. And he's not getting it together. Plus, they don't have Mark Ingram. I know that he's hurt. I think Marlon Humphrey is hurt on the defensive side of the ball. So there's just, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of holes with Baltimore. With Indianapolis, I think their holes, as you mentioned, no TYs on the offensive side. So I think with Phillip Rivers, if Phillip Rivers can make 2 more offensive plays than Baltimore, I think they can come out and win. I think they do it. I like Baltimore at home in this game. I'm sorry. I like Indianapolis. Wrong Baltimore. I like Indianapolis.
Wrong Baltimore. And that's a good point too, because one of the big struggles has been the offensive line for the Baltimore Ravens, and they just lost Ronnie Stanley last week for the season.
Who they just paid.
And isn't it crazy, man? Like, isn't it the life? You can't tell me God doesn't exist after that. Like, dude just gets paid, and then something happens. Like, you never like seeing that. But man, that was crazy to see him. And they're going to be struggling without him because the blind side for Lamar is a big issue because he fumbles the ball a lot. Like, I have him in fantasy leagues, and I'm paying attention to him extra this year. Dude, the guy fumbled twice and threw an interception against Pittsburgh. Like, you can't continuously fumble the ball, and when you have your blind side, that's going to be more than likely a guy who shouldn't be there. They're going to be in some trouble, but for some reason,
You're gonna be getting hit all night by DeForest Buckner. You're gonna need an ice bath by the time that day's over with.
Yeah, get that ice bath ready either way. All right, cool. Let's jump to Kansas City, because Kansas City is gonna be. They are 7-1, and they're a convincing 7-1. I mean, that game that they lost, we know what Patrick Mahomes is, right? The guy is always going to be Patrick Mahomes every single week. It's about that defense, right? Is the defense going to be able to stop enough people? And when you're facing the Jets, it's pretty easy to stop people, right? Like, you're facing the Jets, go ahead, do whatever you want. But I think the real issue right now with Kansas City, and you can go back to that Las Vegas game, is that when teams keep the ball from them, and they don't let Patrick have the ball for the whole fucking game, it's tough for Kansas City. Like, it is legitimately tough for them, because if they do go 3 and out, or if they do have a shortened drive where they have to punt, the other team just going to keep the ball. And I think John Gruden gave a little bit of a blueprint on that. But the last 2 weeks against the Jets and the Denver Broncos have been absolute slaughter. 10.5-point favorites right now are Kansas City at home against Carolina, who's 3-5. And after we talked about Matt Rule having a pretty nice go of things and, getting things going in Carolina, you see them come back down to earth a little bit. Mike Davis, after looking like an all-pro guy, all-world guy, starting to look a little bit more like Mike Davis. And 3 in a row now Carolina has lost, including last week against Atlanta on it was a Thursday night, I think.
Thursday night, yeah.
Thursday night. So, at the end of the day, when you look at it, Carolina has a lot of things to be happy about, a lot of things to be positive about. I don't think this game is one of them. And even with a little bit of an inflated 10.5-point favor for Kansas City, I'll still take them with the points. I think they're going to be able to expose this Carolina defense, who's done a good job so far this season. But right now, I think just Carolina needs what they need right now is an offensive line. If they had a tremendous offensive line that can keep Teddy on his feet, that can open up holes for McCaffrey, and specifically be athletic enough to go out and block on stretches, block on screens, go down the field on draws, they will be really good because they have receivers. They maybe need one tight end in Carolina. They need a couple offensive linemen, and they need some defensive help in the secondary next year. I think they'll be very good next year, to be quite honest. I just don't think right now is the time for them. I like Kansas City.
Yeah, I like Kansas City too. But Kansas City's missing. Are they missing Chris Jones this week?
He actually went on
IR?
Yeah, short-term IR. So I think they're anticipating maybe another 3 weeks without him. So, yeah, Kansas City is a little bit banged up, though. They do have some offensive line issues, and Sammy Watkins going to be out as well. And starting right tackle Mitchell Schwartz will be out.
All right, cool. They'll still beat Carolina, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm on that. So, yeah, no, I'll take the Chiefs minus 10.5. The only thing I will say is that with all the hoopla hype around Russell and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, I feel like the forgotten name in all this is Patrick Mahomes. This dude threw 5 TDs last week, and what is he, like 22-1 TDs to picks? So Patrick Mahomes is like, look, you can talk about these guys all you want. Let me still show you why I'm still the defending Super Bowl champion quarterback. Yeah. And he's done a great job. And I think Carolina right now, like you said, are taking a few steps back. I know they've been hit with injuries, but the positive is that they get their playmaker and Christian McCaffrey back. He is active for tomorrow. It sucks as against the Chiefs on the road nonetheless. So, yeah, I like Kansas City minus 10.5.
Okay. Minnesota, 2-5. They beat the Packers last week. They got some hope, and it's funny because when you're a coach that's on the chopping block, you take that win and you go, we're ready. We're ready for the rest of the season, and that's clearly at the end of the day, we gave Mike Zimmer some grief over the last couple of weeks. He did what they needed to do in against the Packers. Obviously, they rode Dalvin Cook to a win. So they are 2-5 and currently hosting the Detroit Lions. 3-4 are the Lions. Could have been 4-3 if they won that game last week. I mean, that's crazy to think about. They could have been still thinking about some, the NFC North and possibly catching the Packers if they won last week. But obviously, we talked about it earlier. They kind of squandered some opportunities against the Colts, and they lost that one. 3.5-point favorites with Minnesota. I'll let you go first here. What do you think?
I'm going to take Vikings minus the 3.5.
Minus 3.5. Okay.
I feel like as soon as we give Detroit just a little bit of credit,
they're like, we're Detroit.
They go and take I swear to God, dude. It's like, you guys really think we're good? Okay, watch this. Go right back being the Detroit Lions. So I think Minnesota runs the ball big time against Detroit. I see them winning, so I'll take the Vikings minus the 3.5.
I'll go ahead and if the Lions won last week, I would have said the same exact thing you said. But I think because they lost, I think they come back and find a way to do it. I'll be honest with you. The Vikings defense is bad. Very bad.
Yeah.
And they traded everybody. They traded away the guy that they just acquired in the offseason. Traded him to
Yannick Ngakoue. Yeah.
They traded him to Baltimore. Daniil Hunter's out for the year. They were in talks of trading Anthony Harris. The defense is just completely done. And Anthony Barr's another guy whose name came up but never happened. I'm going to go ahead and take Detroit in this one, even on the road. And I'll go ahead and take them with the points, too, because, 3.5-point favorites, all you got to do is win by a touchdown. So I'll go ahead and take the Leons. Speaking of bad teams, the Giants are 1-7, and they're going to Washington to face the football team. 2-5 are Washington, and Washington's coming off I wouldn't say surprising win. I think everyone was going to thought they were going to beat the Cowboys last week, the future All-Pro and probably future Hall of Famer DiNucci. I don't even know his first name. The quarterback for the Cowboys. Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job, but okay. Anyway,
isn't it like Brandon or something like that?
Brandon. I'm gonna put him in the same thing as Jake Lock for now. We're gonna put him in the same category until he does something. He's gonna be Jake Lock to me, okay? But yeah, Washington. They just did what they needed to do. And honestly, Washington's defense is not bad. The problem with them is that they have no offensive line. They don't really have a ton of skill position players. And right now, they don't have a quarterback. Like, if they would have stuck with Haskins, it seems like they could have won a couple of the games the last couple of games. So I don't know what's exactly going on. But in the same right, the Giants have been in close games all season, have kept it close, and, you saw them last week. They did not go away against your team, which is a far superior team. They did not go away, and on top of that, defensively they're pretty scrappy. They don't have the names on the defensive side of the ball, but they're scrappy, and they your team barely eked out a win against them last week, and again, is a far superior team. So clearly the Giants stay in games no matter what, and the Giants are actually 2.5-point dogs, which is not. Clearly Vegas is starting to respect the Giants a little bit more, because on any other week, if you're talking about a 1-7 team and another team who just picked up the win, they probably would be more than a touchdown favorites. I like Washington in this one. I think Devontae Freeman's out again. Golden Tate's out again. I still think right now that offensively Daniel Jones has had a tough time, and it's been offensive line related too. How nice would Tristan Wirfs look on the left side right now instead of Andrew Thomas? I know we bring it up every week on this show, but how good would that offensive line look if they didn't make some of the bad decisions that they did? So I'll take Washington both on the points and the pick 'em.
Okay.
This is a tough one.
This is really tough because I like the way the Giants looked last week. They could have easily had laid down against Tampa, but they didn't. I think the best thing that I like of what you said in your preview was about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones last week could have easily had 4 touchdown passes. That's how bad Jamel Dean was last week. But it's also how much improvement Daniel Jones has. If you go back and watch that game, I want to say it was either in the second or third quarter, Sterling Shepard, I think it was in the third because it ended up being an interception. Sterling Shepard did maybe the easiest GED move. It was like one of those double moves and got wide open. Daniel Jones never looked his way. He did when he went to when Shepard went to cut, and then his eyes went to the right side. Never saw Sterling Shepard 20 yards down the field wide open. And then so the Bucs at this point is now making him scramble out of the pocket, and he threw this horrible pass that ended up getting picked off by Carlton Davis. That's the improvements that Daniel Jones has to make. I still think he's going to be a good quarterback, but at this point now, I don't think it's any more of the weapons that he has. I think now it's just Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has to take that next step up. I like the way, even though Tom Brady threw for 275 and 2 touchdowns last week, it was a real tough 275 and 2 touchdowns. So the Giants defensively, I think, are really good. As far as Washington is concerned, they're coming off the bye week, but at the same time, I just don't buy them offensively. I'm still not buying the whole Kyle Allen game. I'm not buying I'm not buying that. I'm not buying this. I just don't think their offense is that good. And I just think Dallas's defense is trash.
Yeah.
With that being said, I'm gonna take the Giants on the road on the upset to beat Washington tomorrow. So yeah, I'll take the Giants. I think hopefully Joe Judge works with Daniel Jones to realize some of the mistakes he made. I think he can come out if they can maintain Chase Young for being in the backfield and Andrew Thomas doesn't act like a revolving door. Then I think they could beat Washington. So I'll take the Giants. Plus, I'll take the Giants to win, and obviously that would be the upset. So plus the 2.5.
Okay. Yeah, that one probably will and can go either way. Oh man, the AFC South is garbage. Jacksonville's 1-6. Houston's 1-6. No more Gardner Minshew. No more Minshew mania for you, Nick. It will be the the future Hall of Famer in the flesh. Mike Glennon will more than likely be the starting quarterback for the Jaguars. And Houston, I feel bad for them. They had a really rough schedule the first 4 games, and I sympathize with them in that way. But that Green Bay game was bad. They could have won that Green Bay game, and it was really bad. The game against the Titans that went to overtime that they let squander, that was really bad. But I still think right now, Houston's 6.5-point road favorites, by the way, going to Jacksonville. When Mike Glennon's a quarterback, your team's going to lose. So I'm just going to put it like that. Jacksonville, good luck this week. I'm going to go ahead and take Houston.
You said -6.5?
It's -6.5 on the road. Man, you just made me rethink about it now that I look at it, because 6.5 on the road. You know what? No, I think they can. I think they can win comfortably by at least a touchdown and a half. So I'll go ahead. I'll take them for the points as well.
I'm going the opposite way. I'm a support my boy Mike Glennon, who's in Tampa, and the only reason why he lost his job was because Tampa drafted Jameis.
True.
So I'm gonna stick with I think Mike Glennon has an arm. He just can't move.
Yeah, that's the problem. He's so big.
Yeah, he's not really fleet of foot, but the kid's got an arm.
Yeah.
He's got good accuracy. If you give him time, he can pick you apart. Houston's defense is not that good.
That's true. No.
That's even with the great J.J. Watt that everyone wants to make America's hero. Guess what? G.I. Joe is not that great. He's not the back-to-back defensive player of the year that he was many years ago. He's just not. So I like I'm going to take Jacksonville plus 6.5.
Okay. All right. Let's get into some of the 3 o'clock window games. Well, actually, that was, sorry, guys, the last 2 that we've discussed. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was right. This is another short window, 3 o'clock window this week. So it'll be the Chargers. We talked about them 2-5 coming off of, I wouldn't say an ugly loss.
Hard loss.
Yeah, hard. I mean, the thing is, you can't lose that game. Like, no matter what happens, you have too good of a defense, too many skill players to lose that game. Anthony Lynn has to start to take some accountability here. I don't know if this will be the week, because the Raiders, I wouldn't say it's must win for the Raiders, but if you're the Raiders right now and you lose one more game, you drop to 4-4 after what you and I had talked about could possibly be a playoff and beyond type season for them. They just haven't shaped out to be the team we thought they were. And, I know that they took that hard loss against your boys last week or 2 weeks ago, and then they had the win last week against Cleveland. I wasn't necessarily that impressed, because Cleveland, we know their problems right now with skill position players. Odell's out for the rest of the season, and it wasn't even that convincing, to be quite honest. So the Chargers, to me, and by the way, Chargers 1-point favorites at home. So Vegas clearly seeing the same thing we are, that this is a very vulnerable team right now. I think John Gruden is going to go in there and run the ball a lot. Clearly right now, The Raiders are the less healthy team because they have all the COVID issues, Trent Brown, everything along those lines. That could be the one thing that might worry me. The Chargers still have those goons up front. They still have Bosa. They still have the big bodies up front in Ingram, and even they have a guy that I can never pronounce his name for the life of me, but he's another great rush end. I think it's a Wodzu or something like that. But really, really good defensive line for the Chargers. But we saw it last week. Like I said this. I think I said this same thing verbatim last week against the Chargers for the Denver game. They didn't really show up. So I'm sorry. I have to take the Raiders in this game. I just can't see the Chargers bouncing back from a loss like that to win. And if they don't, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I think if they lose this game, we might see Anthony Lynn out on the market here.
What's the spread?
It's 1-point favorites for the home Chargers. So I still think no matter what, I think it's both the points and the pick 'em for the Raiders.
So here's the dilemma. And the dilemma for me is on Vegas. Vegas is a top 10 offense. Boy, that defense is not good.
Yeah.
Whatsoever.
No.
And the way Justin Herbert has been slinging the ball with enstewed confidence since he came in week 2 against Tampa, dude, Justin Herbert is the real deal too, man. The thing is, I know that the Chargers are 2-5, and I think Cincinnati is 2-5 as well.
2-4-1.
They're in good hands, or 2-4. They're both in good hands. Joe Burrow is a winner, and you're going to see that as time goes on. Dude, Justin Herbert, as far as I'm concerned, even though their record doesn't show it, to me is a winner. They're in the Tampa game. They're in the New Orleans game. They're in the Denver game. Dude, what did we say earlier? They've blown 4 double-digit leads since Herbert has come in. And they actually should be, in my opinion, better record-wise than where Vegas is at right now. So it's just, like you said, it's about finishing games. First off, I'm picking the Chargers because I have Justin Herbert on my fantasy team, and it has been, and I picked them up as soon as the Saints game was over with, not knowing that they were on a bye, and I have not been disappointed since. I don't think I've lost a game since.
Wow.
That's how good Herbert is, and Herbert is not just throwing 3-yard, 5-yard, 10-yard TD passes. Yeah. This man is slinging 30, 40, 50-yard TD passes with pure ease and accuracy.
Yeah.
Could not be doing it against a better team with a Huff defense than the Las Vegas Raiders. I like the Chargers in this game. And I'll say this too, even if Vegas does come out as winners, my eyes are going to be on Derek Carr because I know a Raiders fan who put up a picture and looked at Carr's number and said, hey, if they beat the Chargers, would you put him as an MVP candidate? Dude, Derek Carr has some really good numbers. Not saying that he would win MVP, but does he deserve to be in the discussion? The way the offense is running, yeah, he should. And if you know John Gruden, you know that he runs one of the most complicated offenses in the NFL, and Derek Carr seems to be getting it down, so you got to give him some props.
And without many receivers, too, like Nelson Aguilar and, some of these scrubs that they have, he's been doing it with them and Darren Waller, basically. So, yeah, I agree that it's time to give him respect.
And what's his name? Was that Henry Ruggs III that they drafted in the first round is starting to come around. But hey, look at it like this. Nelson Aguilar had dropsies issues when he was in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. He's not having dropsies issues in Vegas. Why? Because for some reason in Philly, they always wanted to make him a slot receiver, which is what he's not.
Yep.
Now that he's on the outside getting those one-on-ones and getting open, he's doing a pretty good damn job. And also sometimes change of scenery goes a long way too.
100%.
I think you know how stupid Philadelphia fans can be sometimes, and I'm pretty sure they was getting on him and was affecting him. He hasn't had to deal with the same thing in Vegas, so
yeah. And how's that working out for Philly too? It's like,
I know they could really use a Nelson Aguilar at this point. Exactly. You're right about that.
All right, cool. Well, one of us is going to have a good record next week. One of us. I don't know if it's going to be me or
the way I'm going. It could be you.
Okay, we'll see. All right, this one's a pretty easy one. Even though my favorite quarterback of all time, whatever his first name, Danucci, is not playing, it'll be. Have they decided who the quarterback is yet, Nick? I haven't seen that.
I did see it. It's
is it Rush or Gilbert?
No, it's Gilbert. Gilbert. Yep,
okay.
I saw that early on ESPN.
Yeah, so good luck with that, guys. The Dallas Cowboys 2-6, and somehow, I mean, the fact that they are 2-6 and they still go back to the meeting room talking about we could be in the playoffs this year. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for us to shift the way that this playoff system works, because good, fine, win your division, great, but which it's a very good possibility that the winner of this, we've seen 7-9 teams, right? We've seen some 7-9 teams sneak in, not too happy about that. There's a very good chance Seattle. There's a very good chance a 5 or 6 win team can win the NFC East. There's no reason for that to happen. Absolutely no reason. But I don't see them escaping with the win this week because the unbeaten Pittsburgh Steelers, 14.5-point favorites, going to Jerry World. And it seems like Jerry's going to have to get some extra whiskey this week because it's probably going to be a slaughter. As well as the Steelers bounced back last week, because remember, that first half wasn't too pretty for the Steelers. It was looking real good for Baltimore. And then the Steelers came out with some fire under them, and they took that game in the second half. So I expect a pure domination here from the Steelers. I would be very careful about a 14.5-point gap. I'm always, no matter how bad the team is, I'm always weary to put money on a 14-point favorite. It's just very, very hard for me to do that. But I think in this case, with Dallas being so bad, I still will take Pittsburgh on both the pick 'em and the points.
Exactly why I'm taking Pittsburgh minus the 14.5. If Dallas had an offense, you'd be absolutely right. They don't. They don't have one. Freaking Amari Cooper is basically stealing money from the Dallas Cowboys. Michael Gallup has seemingly really become the number one wide receiver on the team. It's just all about. Dude, Mike McCarthy runs this Tecmo Bowl-like offense.
Really does.
It's just bad.
So bad.
And but actually, any comments that I want to make on this game really has to go with the playoffs. If the NBA can figure out a way to say, hey, look, just because you win let's say the Central, that's too strong because Milwaukee's really good. Let's say the Mountain Division.
The Atlantic, yeah.
If the team in the Southwest has a better record than whoever won the Mountain Division, guess what? That team's going to have the home playoff spot and you won't. The NFL does need to look into that. You're going to have to keep to the division. So if a team at 6-10 wins the division, makes the playoffs, it kind of is what it is on that. They can't host it though.
Right.
Now
would you reseed? So like, would you do something where, okay, the division winners get in, the wild card get in, but then you would reseed the teams at the playoffs?
You're gonna have to.
Yeah.
You're gonna have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, the Bucks lead the South at 6-2. Green Bay's 6-2, and then Seattle 6-1. Okay, cool. But then you have the Saints that are 5-3.
Bears.
The Bears are, I think
5-3.
they're the outside looking at the Rams or whatever. Arizona, I think, is also in the playoffs. So Dallas would technically be the 7th seed. So, yeah, you're going to get the automatic spot. But, no, you're not the 4th best team in the that's what I think they need to do.
Yeah.
It's just reseed.
Reseed.
You got to reseed it. Because if you win the division, it is what it is. Because if you're going to say, oh, well, you won a division, but you can't make the playoffs, then you might as well just not have divisions.
That's true. Yeah. And on top of that, I think it flabbergasts me that a 5-win team could possibly host a playoff game this year.
Exactly. I'm with you. Dude, your frustrations with that are well warranted. well warranted. Because the last team we saw do that was the 7-9 Seahawks. Yep. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that when Marshawn Lynch had that amazing run? I think they were 7-9
against New Orleans, right?
If I'm not mistaken. Yep.
Yeah.
New Orleans was 11-5, and Seattle was 7-9, and that's when Marshawn Lynch gave New Orleans one of their many playoff L's, when he pretty much ran 80 yards and trucked like 12 New Orleans Saints. Yeah. And I'm in an NFC South Talk Smack group. I'd made sure when you know how Facebook does their own little challenges.
Yeah.
I'd made sure that the New Orleans 5-pick challenge of all their playoff L's over the last 6 years were all put to light.
I mean, the funny part is, if you were talking about Dak being there, maybe the Cowboys would be a team that you look at as maybe the Seattle type team that snuck in during the playoff or get to the playoffs, but maybe has a chance. But that's the sad part is no matter who wins in the NFC East, it's a loss for the league because the Giants aren't good enough to be there. Washington's not good enough to be there. Philadelphia sure as hell isn't good enough to be there. And we know who the Cowboys are at this point without Dak. So, yeah, it's going to be a rough one, I think, overall here for the rest of the season for NFC East fans. But, all right, let's jump into, I think this is the last 3 o'clock window game. So, like last week, we're only going to have 3 games in the 3 o'clock window. So, most of that action happening at 12 o'clock. But the Arizona Cardinals are 5-2. They are hosting the 4-3 Dolphins. The Dolphins are coming off of another big win against the Rams, where they won with the defense. Let's be honest. I mean, Tua didn't do much. He didn't have to do much. The defense just looked tremendous. Continued to score points, pick off Jared Goff, fumble Jared Goff. And if you're a Bears fan, all you could think of is, man, how bad are we that the Dolphins defense did this and we couldn't even stop the bootleg. We couldn't have stopped the bootleg, but the Dolphins single-handedly won the game with their defense. It's just maddening if you're a fan. And then, the Cardinals, let's give them credit. They're coming off, I think it was a bye last week, right? They had a bye last week.
Right.
Because they beat Seattle the week before, and then they had a bye last week.
Right.
So, yeah, if you're Arizona, you got to have a lot of momentum, or a lot of confidence, rather, not much momentum after a bye week. But 5-2, this is a tough game. I'm not sure. I'll let you go first. 4.5-point favorites are the Cardinals at home. Who do you like?
Yeah, I like the Cardinals at home.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Cardinals. The main thing with the Cardinals is that can you trust the defense as well, right? With no Chandler Jones now, it's going to be a lot of relying on Kyler Murray.
If Ryan Fitzpatrick was in this game, the answer would be yes.
True.
Tua's still learning the ropes. Mm-hmm. So I think the answer to that is going to be no. And I know Arizona is without Kenyon Drake this week, but dude, you're still running with Kyler and DeAndre and the living legend and Christian Kirk, and the way, not so much the way he's throwing the ball, but the confidence that Kyler Murray has throwing that football. I think it's going to – dude, the Rams – and I'm with you, dude. If you're frustrated with the way with what happened, especially, seeing how pedestrian they were last week to how much they looked like world burners the week before against the Bears – I'd be pretty pissed off too because, dude, I think the Rams at this point, they're good, but I don't see them more than 9-7, 8-8 good. They're not the Super Bowl winning team that they were, not Super Bowl winning, but the NFC winning team that they were a couple years ago. They're just average.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Everything about them at this point is average. So, yeah. Yeah, but you said the spread was what, 4.5?
It's 4.5 in favor of the home team, the Cardinals.
Yeah, I like the Cardinals minus 4.5.
Okay. I like the Cardinals on the pick'em, but I think this is going to be a really close game because, the main problem with the Dolphins right now is Myles Gaskin is out, and it looks like Matt Breida's also out. So they're going to be doing it with Jordan Howard and mainly Dwayne Washington. You know what? Now that I think about it, dude, you're right. I mean, if this was Fitzpatrick, you can trust that he can manufacture something for your offense. But with Tua, dude, I don't know what it is. I know they didn't use him much. he doesn't look like he's ready for NFL action yet. It's
Nope.
crazy because Gilbert walked in and right away it was like, all right, this dude can do it, right? Same thing with Joe Burrow. You looked at him and you go, this guy looks like an NFL quarterback. I don't know if it's just because I'm not used to watching lefties, but this guy does not look aware of where the defense is, where his receivers are supposed to be. And again, I know it's a limited sample size, but he didn't look tremendous. So, you know what? I'm going to change the way that I think about this. I like the Cardinals as well, both on the points and the pick 'em.
And you know, the sad thing is like, it kills me when I listen to sports radio and everyone's just so on board with the fact that they
bench Ryan,
that they brought in Tua, and I just don't get it. If Patrick Mahomes can sit behind Alex Smith, why can't Tua sit behind Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Yeah,
you know he's coming off an injury. They're playing well with, you know. The Dolphins would have beaten the Rams by at least 16 if Ryan Fitzpatrick. They would not have struggled as much offensively as they did last week with Ryan Fitzpatrick in there. I feel like this is one of those. If the Dolphins were 0-7, bring in two if you have to, see
right.
what you got, blah, blah, blah. All the cliche answers that usually come with starting your rookie quarterback. You didn't need to do it now. There was no point. And I still think that there's no point. So, you know, I feel bad for Ryan. I think he's handled it well now, but I didn't like the way they handled it. And I still think Ryan Fitzpatrick should be starting. And I'm with you. He didn't look great. You know, at least with Joe Burrow, you're not trying to win now, but he's the only quarterback you got. At least with Justin Herbert, even though he got in by a freak accident with Tyrod Taylor, you know, we know he's got an arm. And the crazy thing about Justin Herbert is he actually throws better against the blitz than he does against cover 2.
Yeah.
And then with Tua, you should have just taken your time knowing his history and knowing that he was hurt. You didn't have to bring him in now. So I think that's the difference between the three. And I think you're going to see if Tua looks as pedestrian this week as he did last week, there's going to be questions.
So it's funny you mention that because I read something this week, and I think it was a GM of the Dolphins who came out and said it, and I guess it makes a little bit more sense, but still doesn't make sense. I forgot they have Houston's first-round pick this year. So
they sure do.
They are anticipating that they will have a shot at maybe another quarterback next year. I know that sounds crazy to say, but I think they, in their mind, said, we really need to see what we have in Tua, because if he's not the guy, we may have a shot at a Justin Fields or you know, the kid the kid in not North Dakota State or whoever it was. I want to say is Trey Lance. I'm sorry. We may have a shot at Trey Lance. So it makes sense, I guess, but I think that is short-sighted to say I'm going to make a decision on a quarterback because, well, maybe I'll be in a position next year to choose a quarterback as well. That sounds silly to me. I just don't see it in that way.
But you want to know why I think he might be thinking that way? Because the Dolphins had a clean shot at getting Justin Herbert, and they passed him up.
True.
And you see what Justin Herbert's doing in L.A.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would fairly say if Justin Herbert was in Miami, he'd be doing the same. It's not like Miami has slouches for wide receivers. Right. They got some playmakers down there.
Yeah.
But I think somewhere they're like, damn, we could have taken. It was always tank for Tua. And technically they tried to tank, but Tua landed right there in their lap. And now you're looking at Justin Herbert tearing it up in L.A., and you're like, damn, this could have been like our next Dan Marino, so now we got to see. So I think that's the only reason why he would make that statement, because he's salty as hell that he passed up on Herbert, and Tua can be in a bust.
Clearly it's bad, though. Like, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm pissed. It's like, dude, you're kidding me right now. We're in a position for the playoffs, possibly being in the conversation for the division, and you're sitting here talking about, I'm putting in this quarterback because I want to see what he looks like because I might have another quarterback next year. This shit's crazy. It's like the Tony La Russa shit. Like, you know, let's bring in Tony because in 2 years he's going to have a new guy. We're a playoff team. We're trying to win here. Like, what are we talking about, bro? So, yeah, I was surprised to see that, but at least it makes more sense in my head that, okay, they had the Texans pick, And they're also, one of the things that he mentioned was that they have so much draft capital now that they may be in play for Trevor Lawrence, that they might be able, even if they get the 3rd pick and somebody lands at first, they might be able to trade some assets away and get Trevor Lawrence as well. And that's if Lawrence decides to come out, because now there's a lot of questions flying around now. I highly doubt he stays, but there's a lot of questions around whether or not he wants to go now, and it might depend on which team lands at 1. For Lawrence as well, because if it's the Jets, that's the Eli Manning type move where you're like, I'm not coming out. I'm gonna stay for another year.
I'm with you. Or you can draft me, but I'm letting you know right now that
it's gonna be some Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning shit. You're gonna have to trade me for somebody else because this ain't happening.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about your Bucks, man. I want you to get into this one. Bucks are 4.5-point favorites at home. We don't really need much background on the Bucks versus the Saints. 6-2 are the Bucks. 5-2 are the Saints. It's a big, big, big division game here. So, give me your thoughts.
So, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you noticed last week I didn't say too much about the game. I did not like the way Tampa looked in the game. Yeah. A piece of me thinks that they look pedestrian, especially offensively, with no Godwin and who do we have? And AB wasn't available until this week. But they found a way to pull it off. Another piece of me tells me that they were looking ahead to this game against the Saints and forgot that they were playing against, because remember, they were losing 14-3 going in the half. Mm-hmm. And they had to put it all together finally take a 25-14 or 25-17 lead. A couple of things happened in the game against the Giants, and I don't know if like someone is not in the ear of Bruce Arians, but someone needs to be following Bruce Arians everywhere he goes, only because in the 4th quarter, Leonard Fournette ran for a first down when he got tripped up and he dove over the first down line. They marked him a whole yard short.
And he didn't challenge.
And he never challenged it.
Yeah.
I mean, he was way above it and he never challenged it. And I'm thinking, either you're starstruck that Tom Brady's out there or you totally whiffed. Yeah. And we can't have either one.
Yeah. Because
that game was so close. Now, I give Bruce Arians this much credit. Had he not gone for 3, and had he gone to try, because Tom Brady wanted to go for the first down, because at that point, had no timeouts left. So you could easily run the clock at this point, and the game is over with. Bruce said, no, we'll go for the 3. We'll put them up by 8 and make them beat us with the touchdown, or at least tie the game with it, and they almost did. So my thing is with Tampa is the mistakes that they made defensively against Daniel Jones. You're not going to be able to make those same mistakes this week against Drew Brees. Now, with that being said, Drew Brees is coming in. He's not 100%. He has the right shoulder injury. He's still going to play. Michael Thomas will be back in the game. He's going to play. Once again, you know my defensive philosophy. I don't care if it's Levante David. I don't care if it's Devin White. When it's 3rd and 3, one of y'all has to have an eye on Alvin Kamara, because there's a great chance that ball's going to him. Mm-hmm. And both of y'all have the speed to get out in there flat and make sure he does not run for 15 flipping yards on a simple catch, because that's how he burnt the Buccaneers in the first week. My ode is this. If I'm Saints fans, one of the biggest bunch of idiots in the world, I would be careful about trying to stick your chest out, because they're like, well, we beat you in week 1. Remember that week 1 game? New quarterback, new system, no preseason, no nothing. So the offense is still starting to gel. You're going to tell me that the Buccaneers, that have been 6-1 since that loss, has not gotten better over the weeks? And the only 2 games that Tom Brady really struggled are 2 games that Chris Godwin wasn't in. The loss to the Bears and the win last week. So the Bucs get Godwin back. The Bucs get AB this week. You can see that the connection with Gronk and Tom Brady is back. And I think that BA and BL, as in Byron Leftwich, needs to stick with Ronald Jones in the run game. Ronald Jones needs to learn how to catch footballs out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Because this dropping passes stuff drives
really
me nuts.
bad.
He dropped 3 passes in the game against the Giants.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, come on, man. So I think Ronald Jones is a better runner in between the tackles right now than Leonard Fournette. But Leonard Fournette's going to get more tick because he can actually catch the damn football.
Right.
Obviously, I like Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is going to have that game that we saw against Green Bay, where there might be a lot of people that's not giving us credit per se, and I think that they're going to come and try and hit Drew Brees in the mouth. So give me Tampa minus the 4.5, but this is a huge game, and that's why I said that Bears loss on Sunday was huge, because now that New Orleans is in that picture, New Orleans now has the tiebreaker over the Bears, but the Bears had the tiebreaker over us. So if the Bears lose this week and we lose this week, we'll now move from the 2nd spot to the 7th spot with the Bears on the outside looking in. So, but for this game right here, I like Tampa minus the 4.5 against New Orleans.
Yeah, honestly, I think you hit it on the head. One thing I will say from an outsider's perspective, and maybe you can correct me on this, but Bruce Arians has not gotten better at disciplining his team. And one thing that I can really say from an outsider's perspective is I understand that the positive of Bruce Arians, that people and players love playing for him, right? It's a he's a player's coach. But the problem with that is that the discipline starts to wane, and when you have lack of discipline, you have what you saw on Monday night with a team that is clearly lesser than you having a shot at that game. That's not what you want, right? And you still have time to figure that out. And that's the good thing with Bruce, because you can give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that this is a new team, right? You cannot look at Bruce last year and say that, let's compare that to now, right? You have Tom Brady now, vastly different expectations this year. That was my main concern going into this game. And, I don't think I'm so low on Bruce Arians that I can be high on the Saints right now, because I saw the Saints a couple weeks ago, or a week ago rather, and I'm not that impressed with them. I feel like right now, if the Bears can stay in it with you at the level that the Bears are playing, I think the Bucs should be able to go in there and blow things up. I know they didn't make an explicit commitment to how much they're going to play Antonio Brown, but I think they'll play him some and get a feel for it. And we saw what his first game looked like with the Patriots. When he went to the Patriots, he got a touchdown on like 4 or 5 catches and a touchdown against the Dolphins in his first game. So clearly this is something him and Tom can get going right away. Another thing I will mention is that the Buccaneers defense, I think, has to get rid of the big plays. You cannot continuously give up big plays. And I'm not just talking about yardage-wise. I'm talking about getting off the field on 3rd down. I'm talking about stopping a team's momentum, not giving them. That's one thing that really kills you with undisciplined teams is you give the other team a second chance. And giving other teams second chances in this league makes it a lot easier for them. So for all of these reasons, I still think the Buccaneers have too much firepower on offense. And even with Michael Thomas back, I'm not sure what I can say about New Orleans that's going to make me think they're going to go in there and blaze through the Bucs. One thing that you mentioned is Devin White and Levante David, two of the best pass coverage guys as far as linebackers are concerned in the league. Devin White mainly just because the guy can fly. So if I'm the Saints, even though Levante David might be a better overall pass coverage guy, I just take the speed of White and I put it near Kamara and I let my linebacker go and make plays and try and limit it, right? You're not going to stop Kamara on those short ones, but you can't let him get the 12, 15, 17, 20-something yards. You have to let him get the 4, 5, 6, 7 yards and stop him right in his tracks so that you can continue to do your thing. So I still like Tampa Bay in this one. I'll go ahead and take them both on the points and on the pick. I just think right now, if I didn't watch the Saints last week against the Bears, I might have a different opinion. But, I'm not ready to crown the Saints at all, even with Michael Thomas back.
Right.
All right, let's get into the last one. I'm not sure how compelling the storyline is here. The 0-8.
What's the spread? That's the only question I have is what's the
Let's
spread?
just get right down to it. It's 9.5 points for the road team, the New England Patriots, who they could have won that game last week, against the Bills. But, at the end of the day, when you give the ball to Cam Newton and you let him try and get you yards, he's probably going to fumble, more than you would suspect, because he's not a running quarterback anymore. We said this in the first couple of weeks. If the Patriots continue to play ball like Cam is Lamar Jackson, they're going to be in trouble. And I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, they're going to change this. You probably won't see Cam run much. You're going to see Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels changing things up, and we haven't seen it. And quite frankly, it has a lot to do with the lack of help that he has right now. No Sony Michel. James White is as traditional as it gets for a receiving running back, but he's not a running back that you want to turn around and give the ball to a lot. And even the guys that they do have right now in the Burkheads and the Harris and these guys, these aren't world beaters, right? So, and we talked about it before, their receiving core is really bad right now too. And N'Keal Harry's not very good. No tight ends to speak of. Can I make a crazy prediction? I think the Jets are going to win this one on Monday night. I think I'm going to take them on the pick'em, but I'm going to take I'm going to take them on the points. But I'm nervous to take them on the pick'em, but I'll take them for both because I still think right now, especially if you give the Jets 9.5 points, I just don't think the Patriots are there quite yet. So I'm going to go ahead and take the upset. I like the Jets on Monday Night Football as bad as they are. I'm not even going to talk about the Jets. The Jets suck. Sam Darnold and all these guys, I just have a lack of confidence in the Patriots. I'm going to go crazy here and say I'll take the Jets. You're looking at me like, is this dude on crack? What's going on?
I sure just wrote you down for the Patriots on the assumption.
Because here's the problem. I'm no longer going to be making picks on this show based on confidence of the winner alone, right? Now what I'm going to start to look at is the losing team. Like, for example, with New Orleans, right? I think New Orleans and the Bucs, talent-wise, pretty close. Maybe the Bucs are a little bit more talented on the offensive side of the ball. But when you look at what the Saints don't do well, and when you look at what the Saints, their shortcomings are, I can start to see Tampa Bay overflowing, right? And that's the same thing with the Jets. I'm not saying the Jets are good. I'm saying right now the Patriots are bad. And also, the Patriots are bad because Bill Belichick was talking about trading Gilmore. He was talking about trading this guy and no real committed. Let's remember, I think it's a 1-year deal with Cam. So if you're Bill Belichick, you might be thinking about next year.
Yeah, you're right. I'm taking the Patriots to win, but I'm gonna take the 9.5 with the Jets. I think you really hit it on the head on a lot of that stuff. We know that the Jets suck, but the Patriots aren't really that much better.
No.
And this is one of those games where I know a lot of Jets fans are hoping they go 0-16 so they can tank and go for Trevor Lawrence, or just get the first overall draft pick at this point because there's no guarantee of what Trevor's going to do. But yeah, the Patriots are not leaps and bounds better.
No.
And I think once they got past Seattle, all the shortcomings of New England started coming together because they were running all over the Dolphins, and the Dolphins' defense hadn't really gelled yet. And then Seattle's defense we know isn't really that great. But then they just started taking these L's, and they just look pedestrian, and they just don't look good. And then Cam got COVID, and then it was just all kinds of nonsense. And so I think with the Jets, I think they're going to hang in there. I don't know if they're going to win, but I think they're going to hang in there. And so yeah, Patriots to win, but I'll take the Jets plus the 9.5.
All right, cool.
On the spread.
Even on the slow weeks, we do 3 hours. We're just professionals at this point. We know what we do. We don't even.
That's how it is, dude.
All right, man. We talked about how, and Steve, can you do me a favor and just pull up our RM talk so I could give that to the people one more time if you're hearing this. And yeah, again, we should have some more. I think we said that is it December 22nd is going to be the start of the NBA season now.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay,
Yeah.
December 22nd. So, we've got a couple weeks, maybe until Thanksgiving, until we start to see some real substantial stuff that we can start to talk about. But you'll still see UFC talk. I think soon enough we'll start to see maybe some traction on the MLB free agency side. So we could talk some hot stove stuff soon. So that's going to go really well. So, again, guys, thank you again for tuning in, sharing, whatever you're doing. Just continue to do what you do. Again, help us out and share out the show. Check us out on YouTube as well. If you guys, if Facebook isn't your thing, we have YouTube page that currently live streams, and also, we'll have all the episodes up after they go live. And just do us a huge favor again and check out rmtalk.com. We talked about them, Rolling Meadows Talk, local news offer website, basically for the whole northwest suburbs of Chicago. So local deals, events, business directory. Do us a favor again, check it out, rmtalk.com. And obviously we talked about the current deal they have going on with Reps Reps Place Sports Bar. So again, small businesses need your support, guys. Help them out. Go to rmtalk.com for local offers and news. And again, we talked about this at the top of the show, but I do want to make sure that you guys understand they have a pretty awesome exclusive offer going on right now. Basically, you get a gift for giving a gift this season at Reps. Essentially, Reps is going to be offering a gift card with rewards for the RM Talk visitors through the holidays. So you would essentially go to the RM Talk website, which we've given you, and you'll go to the deals. There's homepage as well. But if you purchase a gift card at Reps Place using the offer, you'll receive an additional gift card for free. So I believe $25 will get you an extra $5, $50 will get you an extra $10, and $100 will get you an extra $25. So it's an awesome deal for you guys. You can claim the offer at the website like we talked about. The coupon code will be mailed to you, and then you'll present that code over at Reps Place when you make the gift card purchase, and they'll go ahead and redeem the bonus gift card for you as well. So again, you can check all this out at rmtalk.com. That's the most important thing. There's plenty of ways that you can check it out. It'll be on the homepage. You can look at the deals overall as well. But that's an awesome thing that RM Talk and Reps Place is doing. All right, Nick, anything else?
I got nothing. The Saints fans can chomp on my balls, and once we take official, once we grab the NFC South by the balls, next week's show is going to be absolutely lit because I might spend 3 hours just talking about how much Saints fans are probably the biggest idiot fan group next to Green Bay Packer fans who give me gas.
I don't know about
my fans are such idiots.
I don't know about the listeners, but I'm going to be turning on post notifications for Nick's Facebook this week. I want in on all the action this week, so I will be paying close attention. I suggest you guys do the same if you like some Saints trash talk. We got it for you. All right, cool. Well, again, guys, appreciate all the love, appreciate the support. Continue to check us out and continue to share us out. We appreciate all the love. Thank you again. Steve's in the back. I'm Mack. That's Nick. Peace.